any instrument said to be made pursuant to a power granted by Parliament must be tabled before the House. What should obtain if a regulation-making body fails to table such an instrument? As noted by the Deputy Leader of the Minority, the Honorable Robert Mbui MP, Section 11 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013 automatically nullifies statutory instruments not laid before Parliament for scrutiny. Though the provision may be clear to us as a House, it has to be put into context. Both the Statutory Instruments Act 2013 and the standing orders only contemplate the activation of the mandate of the Committee on Delegated Legislation upon tabling of a statutory instrument before the House. Conversely, regulation-making bodies and other functionaries of the executive publish various instruments they require the public to obey without providing any evidence that they have tabled such instruments for scrutiny. Honorable members, it is therefore clear that the gap between the exercise of the delegated lawmaking authority and the scrutiny of subsidiary legislation has led to the general public blindly abiding by statutory instruments merely on the basis that they have been published. Further, the public is not able to access information on when and where such statutory instruments have had the force of law. Currently, a public-spirited citizen is the one required to ascertain whether a particular instrument that impacts on his or her rights was indeed tabled before Parliament. Again, if the citizen discovers that an instrument was not laid before Parliament has not therefore been scrutinized, he or she is the one to seek judicial review and quashing of that instrument. To my mind, Parliament ought not to allow such a state of affairs to exist unchecked. Honorable members, allow me to give you an overview of the practice and procedure obtaining in the United Kingdom, where we have borrowed quite heavily on the law, practice, and procedure relating to statutory instruments. In the UK, ministers use delegated legislation to make changes to the law under powers given to them in an act of Parliament. Statutory instruments are the most common type of delegated legislation. About 3,500 become law each year. It is worth noting that in the UK, the act that contains the powers to make delegated legislation usually specifies what needs to happen to the statutory instrument for it to become law. Many statutory instruments are not subject to any parliamentary procedure, and a minister can simply sign them into law. In the same jurisdiction, where parliamentary procedure applies, the statutory instrument must be formally presented to Parliament. It then usually takes one of the following three main routes. A, negative procedure. The statutory instrument automatically becomes law unless there are objections to it within a specified period, usually 40 days. B, affirmative procedure. In this case, the statutory instrument must be actively approved before it becomes law. It's debated in a delegated legislation committee or less commonly in the chamber. Then the House decides whether to approve it or not. C, super affirmative procedure. This involves an additional stage of scrutiny where Parliament considers a proposal for statutory instrument before the statutory instrument is formally presented or laid, akin to our pre-publication scrutiny. This last procedure is used for statutory instruments that are considered to need a particularly high level of scrutiny. Honorable members, there are some specialized categories of statutory instruments that are used for particular purposes that are or can be considered under the super affirmative procedure. These statutory instruments usually amend or repeal acts of Parliament. Under the super affirmative procedure, a minister presents a proposal for a statutory instrument and an explanatory statement. Committees in the House of Commons and the House of Lords consider the proposal and can make recommendations. Then the minister can formally present or lay a draft of the statutory instrument under the affirmative procedure. When statutory instruments are formally presented to Parliament, They are said to be laid, and when a minister has signed them into law, they are said to be made. Most statutory instruments are presented to the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Some, mainly those involving finance, are only presented to the House of Commons. Statutory instruments can't usually be amended. Each House can simply approve or reject the instrument. Worth noting too is that the UK has a statutory instrument service that enables the public and all concerned to follow the progress of all statutory instruments formally presented to Parliament and to see what stages are coming up next. It provides the deadlines for annulling a negative instrument and also shows a link to all debates, committee reports, and decisions in both houses, a link to the text of the statutory instrument, and information on whether the statutory instrument will be debated in a delegated legislation committee or in the chamber. Honourable members, while we borrowed a lot from the UK law, practice and procedure, our constitutional architecture is different, and our law practice and procedures have been evolving. Indeed, our Committee on Delegated Legislation is a creation of both the Statutory Instruments Act 2013 and Standing Order 210. As a committee of the House, it is imbued with full powers and privileges outlined under paragraph 1 of the Standing Orders 191, which provides as follows. Committees shall enjoy and exercise all the powers and privileges bestowed on Parliament by the Constitution and Statute, including the powers to A, summon any person to appear before it for the purpose of giving evidence or providing information, B, enforce the attendance of witnesses and examine them under oath, affirmation, or otherwise, C, compel the production of documents, D, request for and receive papers and documents from the government and the public, and E, issue a commission or request to examine witnesses abroad. The foregoing powers allow the committee to call for scrutiny of any instrument said to be made in exercise of powers delegated under an Act of Parliament. Additionally, honourable members, the committee is at liberty, pursuant to its oversight mandate, to notify the executive and all regulation-making bodies to ensure that any instrument said to be made in exercise of authority delegated under an Act of Parliament is tabled before Parliament strictly within the prescribed timelines. In the unlikely event that the regulation-making bodies persist in their failure to table instruments that ought to be tabled in Parliament, the committee is at liberty to report that fact to the House. To insulate the public from blind obedience of instruments that are seemingly immunized from parliamentary scrutiny, the House may resolve to direct the publication of a notice highlighting the non-compliant statutory instruments and their fate in light of Section 11 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013. In summary, honourable members, I therefore guide as follows. 1, that Article 125 of the Constitution and Standing Order 191(1) of the National Assembly Standing Orders allow the Committee on Delegated Legislation to call up for scrutiny of any instrument said to be made in exercise of powers granted under an Act of Parliament. And 2, that in the event that regulation-making bodies persist in failure to table instruments that ought to be tabled in the House, the Committee on Delegated Legislation is at liberty to report that fact to the House. The House may resolve to direct the publication of a notice highlighting the non-compliant statutory instruments and their fate in light of Section 11 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013. Indeed, honourable members, the committee may wish to look at the Act and tighten the process of presenting those instruments to this House, including but not limited to giving a notice in the Kenya Gazette, which the House regularly can check and alert the body making the instruments that until and unless they're tabled in the House, they have no force of law. I thank you. members, take your seats. I have two other short communications. Once I finish, I'll allow members to make comments on that issue on statutory instruments. I don't know if Honorable Chepkonga is in the House. Honorable members, we have to recognize a leadership from the County Assembly of Baringo, seated in the Speaker's Gallery. I wish to introduce to you a delegation comprising of leadership from the County Assembly of Baringo, who are seated in the Speaker's Gallery. The delegation comprises the following. When I mention your name, our guests, you stand for acknowledgement. The Honorable Vincent Kemboi, Speaker of the County Assembly and leader of the delegation. The Honorable Kipruto Kimosop, Deputy Speaker. The Honorable Lawi Talam, the leader of majority. The Honorable Daniel Tuwit, leader of minority party. The Honorable Josephat Lokorio, Deputy Majority Leader. The Honorable Paul Lolgisoi, Deputy Minority Leader. The Honorable Ernest Kibet, Majority Whip. The Honorable Maria Losile, Minority Whip. The Honorable Purity Talam, Deputy Majority Whip. The Honorable Solomon Makal, Deputy Minority Whip. The delegation is accompanied by the Clerk of the Assembly, Ms. Winnie Chemase, and 3 staff members. Honorable members, the delegation has been attending a capacity building program offered by the Center for Parliamentary Studies and Training, CPST, from 28th November until 2nd December 2022 at the CPST's current campus, Nairobi. Honorable members, on my own behalf and that of the National Assembly, I welcome them to the National Assembly and wish them fruitful engagement during the course of their program. I thank you. Honorable members, you should show good welcome to our guests. Honorable members, the next is a short communication on the post-election seminar for the National Assembly. Honorable members, as you are all aware, the 13th Parliament was inaugurated on 8th September 2022, after which an induction workshop of all members was undertaken here in Nairobi. In keeping with the tradition within the Commonwealth, the National Assembly, in conjunction with the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, the CPA, has organized a 4-day post-election seminar from 30th January 2023 to 3rd February 2023. Honorable members, this seminar is organized in partnership with the CPA and is aimed at building capacity of members of the 13th Parliament in all aspects of good parliamentary practice, as well as promoting our national values and the ideals of parliamentary democracy. We shall also reach out to our partners, the United States of America's National Democratic Institute and the International Republican Institute, IRI, with a view to benefiting from best practices in the U.S. Congress, particularly on matters touching on bicameralism and multi-party democracy. Honorable members, most importantly, the sessions will provide members with a window to gain a better understanding of parliamentary systems and processes in established jurisdictions such as the UK, the US, among others, while also affording opportunity to hear and interact with speakers from some of our sister parliaments within the East African community and the larger African continent. Additionally, honorable members, the seminar will also provide a platform for members to discuss and engage with players from other arms of government and experts in the areas of democratic governance. I therefore take this opportunity to invite all members to this very important event and request all of us to make time and attend. The clerk will share specific details regarding the seminar in due course, including but not limited to venue out of Nairobi and all other logistics. The House is accordingly informed. The Those two members, take your seats. Order, honorable members. My last short communication is in relation to the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. This must be music to the Deputy Speaker's ears. Honorable members, the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, GBV, is an annual campaign that begins on 25th November every year on the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, and runs through the International Human Rights Day commemorated on 10th December each year. Honorable members, this year's theme, Unite Activism to End Violence Against Women and Girls, will be commemorated globally and in Kenya. The focus will be to mobilize member states, civil society and women's rights organizations, organizations working with men and boys, the UN system, the Action Coalition on Gender-Based Violence, human rights defenders, private sector, and individuals to stand in solidarity and call for a world free from violence against women and girls. Honorable members, the government of Kenya, a key champion of gender equality, is co-leading the Gender-Based Violence Action Coalition under the General Equality Platform, committing to 12 actions to eradicate all forms of gender-based violence, GBV, and female genital mutilation, FGM, by 2026. These commitments will be realized through intensified campaigns and working together to remove systemic barriers that allow GBV to thrive. Honorable members, it's against this background that UN Women, in partnership with my office and the Kenya Women Parliamentary Association, KEOPA, have organized a personal commitment event geared towards securing personal commitments of members of Parliament and key duty bearers on their actions to end GBV in Kenya. This very important event will take place at the members' new dining room, Main Parliament, on Thursday, 1st December 2022, between 7 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. A light breakfast will be served. In this regard, honorable members, I cordially invite all members to attend this event and join in showing solidarity towards the elimination of GBV in Kenya and ensuring that women and girls live a life free of violence. Honorable members, may we also take cognizance of the fact that Thursday, 1st December 2022, is the World AIDS Day. It is noteworthy that the spread of HIV/AIDS is a major concern as its spread is accelerated by gender-based violence. According to UNAIDS, women who have experienced gender-based violence are up to 3 times more likely to be infected with HIV than those who have not. Let us all prioritize creating awareness. Let us all protect our women and girls, and let us all live together in peace and harmony. Thank you. Next. Sorry, members, that was a bit long. Sorry, I indicated. Anybody who wants to make comments on the statutory instruments communication, you are free to do so. I don't see the Honorable Chepkonga who triggered the issue. I'll start with Honorable, is that Chematia? No, Wamushomba. Give the floor to the Honorable Member for Githunguri.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Honorable Speaker. Bear with me, my voice is a bit unbalanced. But I'm very excited, Mr. Speaker. I have been waiting for the ruling concerning these pieces of registration that were passed in the previous Parliament. And like you have rightly put, that there were some procedures that were not properly followed. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to inform you that some of those pieces that were passed have adversely affected the way we do things, especially in some sectors. Mr. Speaker, in this parliament we have a coffee caucus, and I believe that one of the issues that made members of parliament to come together to discuss coffee issues is because of a certain legislation that was passed in the previous parliament, the 12th parliament, that adversely affected the way we trade and the way we manage coffee. So we are very excited with your ruling, Mr. Speaker, and we are looking forward to seeing better ways of handling the issues, correction of the mistakes that were done as errors of omission or commission, so that we can be able to give our farmers the rightful share of the returns of their crop. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of coffee, I want to notify, and I would want to probably to talk about it here because it is in the public domain, that because of the regulations that were passed here without correct procedures, farmers have been complaining, traders have been complaining, millers and growers have been complaining, and we hope that from today onwards we are going to provide a solution. Thank you, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Honorable Mshomba. Those who want to comment, go to interventions. That is Honorable Sunguli. Is that Oundo?
Yes. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you very much as a member of the Delegated Legislation Committee for that very well-reasoned ruling. Mr. Speaker, we have noted this in the committee, that indeed there are some people and some organizations that are taking advantage of delegated powers to make far-reaching legislation without reverting to Parliament. Indeed, there is a big number, I do not have the figures, of such regulations that have actually now expired, and they continue to be implemented. I think your statement today, Mr. Speaker, stamps the authority of Parliament as the sole law-making organization, or rather authority in Kenya. And many of these laws that have been made outside the authority of Parliament should be recalled, and with your help, Mr. Speaker, the committee will look into these, each one of them, over 2,000 pieces of legislation maybe that are awaiting to be approved by the Committee on Delegated Legislation. I think from today, everybody will know that indeed Parliament is the only law-making power. But Mr. Speaker, I believe myself that you need to go a little bit further and say that Parliament must look for a way of, say, gazetting everything that it has done, so that there is a place where the public can go to and check whether that particular piece of legislation has the stamp of Parliament or not. Because if you want to go for judicial review, you have to really search everywhere, maybe Hansard only, to see whether that has received the stamp of Parliament. So maybe we need to look at that in future, and I support what you,
that work is cut out for your committee.
Yes, thank you for
the proposals to amend the law to save the public from quack legislation that is hurting so many people.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Oundo. Members, you are also at liberty to comment on the gender-based violence issue because it's also topical and important. Honorable Oundo, give him the next microphone. Take the next available, they will pass on to you. Clerk.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Sorry, the microphone isn't working. I've had to displace a serious member of this House who handles very serious issues for members. Honorable Speaker, Article 94 of the Constitution is expressly clear. The only body in this country authorized to make laws is National Assembly. We members of Parliament cannot shrink away from that responsibility, and hence we need to take our work seriously. Honorable Speaker, have the benefit of having been a member of the Committee of Delegated Legislation in the 12th Parliament. And during that time, we came across some issues and some things that baffled many of us and wondered where the executive is serious about legislative agenda for this country. Honorable Speaker, there has always been misunderstanding or deliberate misinterpretation of the Statutory Instrument Acts to determine what falls within the purview of that particular act. And that's why I encourage the new members of the Statutory Instrument, the committee, to look at this act, redraft it, so that everything that has got the force of law, anything that results in any pecuniary loss to any particular person, any form of levies and fees that are initiated or incorporated this country, needs to pass through the normal system as we go through. Honorable Speaker, and one of the areas they need to continuously check on is the adequacy of public participation. We came across many instances where the regulatory making authority would call a few compliant members, sit down, decide this is the law or this is the regulations, and then they'll bring it to us. And as based on the Statutory Instrument Act, once it satisfies the Constitution, satisfies some element of public participation, we are not allowed to look at the merits and demerits of the regulation. Those are areas that we need to look at as we change along. Probably, Honorable Speaker, the committee has got the competent clerks. They can take an inventory by looking at each and every act of Parliament, because along with this will publish the subsidiary legislation and review to find out if they were ever enacted or not. Finally, on the issue of GBV, Honorable Speaker, I welcome, and indeed it's a good thing to do, to protect our women and the girl child as we go along. But Honorable Speaker, in your capacity also urge you to protect the boy child as well. The boy child is suffering even much more than the girl child currently. All the attentions, all the efforts are directed on the the girl child and the women, yet there are very many men who are suffering GBV, and since we don't want to talk, we die silently. That's why, Honorable Speaker, we find the rate of suicide is far much higher amongst men compared to women. We urge the women, as they articulate issue of the girl child, they are also mothers to the boy child. The men are their husbands, they are their fathers, they are their brothers, they are their uncles, they are the mpango akandos. They should also likewise, include as much effort as they do for the women. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Ndindi Nyoro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I would wish that you indulge in me in reading Article 94 of our Constitution, that the legislative authority of the Republic is derived from the people and at the national level is vested in and exercised by Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution is very clear on who is mandated to make laws in this country, and it is this House, Mr. Speaker, in terms of Parliament, and there is no other body or organization that should try or pretend to usurp the powers of this House. Mr. Speaker, we have to take our rightful role in making laws for this country, and it is our mandate, and we should do what we do best, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also, in regards to charging any kind of money to Kenyans, insofar as levies is concerned or fines are concerned, Mr. Speaker, it is also a prerogative of this House. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we should set a very clear warning to anyone out there, either associated with government or from any other quarter, that they should respect the Constitution of our country, Mr. Speaker, that divides the roles of every organization, of every arm of government, Mr. Speaker, and that has vested the powers of making laws in this country to the Parliament of Kenya. On the issue of the GBV, Mr. Speaker, I speak as the son of a woman because myself, I was raised by my mother after my father passed on, Mr. Speaker. Also, fortunately, I am the only man in our home because the others are sisters, and especially our extended family. And I know the value of women and the value that women play in our economy, in our households. And Mr. Speaker, therefore, here as Parliament, as leaders, and also as men of this Republic of Kenya, we should be on the forefront in protecting our women, protecting the girl child, Mr. Speaker, and we can do actually much more with our CDF by making sure that our girls are well educated, taken to schools, Mr. Speaker, because they play a very critical role in our economy, Mr. Speaker, and the same role that is played by men. Actually, from where we sit, for example, even in Kiharu, when we are doing any kind of hiring, Mr. Speaker, we are usually obliged to gender. And by so doing, we actually end up having 50-50 in terms of gender balance, or even in some circumstances, having more women. Mr. Speaker, even as we do so, we should also be protecting the interest of the boy child, because mostly, Mr. Speaker, in the recent years, we have had many organizations, Mr. Speaker, on the forefront on championing the rights and the privileges of our ladies, Mr. Speaker, to the detriment of boys. Many times I go to our schools and looking around the composition of our teachers. I don't know whether this only happens in Kiharu. You find that over 80% of our teaching staff in most of our schools, Mr. Speaker, are actually our ladies. It is a good leap forward, but it is also a reminder that even as we promote the rights of women and their privileges, Mr. Speaker, we must also not leave the other gender behind. We should move forward united, together, and incorporate everyone as we move our country forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Umulher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for granting me this opportunity. I would like to speak on the GBV. Mr. Speaker, it's good that you gave a communication on the importance of acknowledging that GBV, the beast called GBV, lives amidst us, Mr. Speaker. This year's theme is unite. Mr. Speaker, that means that we should unite to end any kind of violence against women and girls. I'm glad that the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro mentioned that he is the proud son of a woman. Mr. Speaker, you know the role women play in our society. Women, without a woman, Mr. Speaker, there is no man. In whichever spheres, we are your mothers, your wives, your sisters, Mr. Speaker, your girlfriends, Mr. Speaker. That I was forced to say, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if a woman is empowered, the whole society is empowered. The men that have fears that the boy child has been neglected, Mr. Speaker, I assure them that when a woman is empowered, the boy child gets empowered, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, you know, this is a house of records, and what the Honorable Member has insinuated has gone into record, that she was forced. I don't know who forced, whether it is the weather, or a colleague, or the maid. And Mr. Speaker, if it is a colleague, I think it is not good to impute improper motives, because we are here as equals in this house, and no one has capacity to force, coerce any other member into saying anything that is not in line with their line of thought.
You are absolutely right, the honorable member. Nobody should force you to say anything.
Nobody forced me to say anything. A girlfriend can be a potential wife, Mr. Speaker. Only that I left it out, but to all those who are waiting to be wives, Mr. Speaker, that's an assurance for them. Mr. Speaker, and in any case, it's not the end of life to be a wife, Mr. Speaker. You can as well remain single and be a proud woman. Mr. Speaker, GBV comes in all forms. You men could perhaps be inflicting GBV on your wives unconsciously, Mr. Speaker. Emotional damage, Mr. Speaker. When you actually every day nag a woman on how her kids have not performed well, how your conjugal rights have been denied, Mr. Speaker. You've seen that the majority of people working now are women, Mr. Speaker. We all go home very tired. Unfortunately, roles have shifted to women. The men have decided to just be bystanders. Mr. Speaker, let me not delve much on issues to do with men. The issue at hand now is the violence that is committed by ourselves, like the FGM, Mr. Speaker, early marriages, physical abuses to our girls, women, and young girls, Mr. Speaker. You see children defiled. Unfortunately, these issues mostly happens to people who are poverty-stricken, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, they are intimidated not to report cases of violence. The only way we can overcome this is through taking our boys and girls to school, Mr. Speaker, so that when they grow old, big enough to decide for themselves, they can make informed decisions on issues to do with their lives, Mr. Speaker. The abuse inflicted on me and the abuse inflicted on a girl in the remotest village in Mandera is different, Mr. Speaker. I will be able to speak out and speak about my rights, but not the girl who is not educated. So I would urge all of you to allocate some funds to girl child education, Mr. Speaker. That is the only way we can overcome this menace, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
All members, I'll just give two more on either side, then we close that. I'll now recognize the Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, allow me also to weigh in on your communication about the regulations, Honorable Speaker. First is to thank you so much that your guidance of the House with respect to Article 94 is very timely, Honorable Speaker. Is a decision, is a ruling of its own kind, and Honorable Speaker, you've really hit where the nail meets the rubber, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, what happens with most of the government sector is that they assume that they make laws within their boardrooms. And once they make those kind of decisions, Honorable Speaker, they end up harassing Kenyans without necessarily following the due process. Through your guidance, Honorable Speaker, today, I wish to call on the chair, the Committee on Implementation, to really take over the communication you've done, so that, Honorable Speaker, wherever we go, whatever happens, let it be very clear that the process of making any regulation, any act or law must be done through this House, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, about the gender-based violence, I wish also to join my colleagues, Honorable Speaker, to say that it is time we all belong to one universe. It is time everybody lives freely. It's time, Honorable Speaker, no one chooses to be a female or a male, and gender does not apply to female alone, Honorable Speaker. Therefore, it's important that, Honorable Speaker, we allow each one of us to live in society freely, enjoy the freedom that is given and guarded jealously by the Constitution of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, when it comes to the harassment that our ladies face, whenever we read in the newspapers, watch on television sets, Honorable Speaker, it's very embarrassing. Similarly, Honorable Speaker, us men are also facing the same challenges. You find, Honorable Speaker, where men have also ended up losing what is very important for them in society, Honorable Speaker. Once, Honorable Speaker, you are maybe defamed in terms of manhood, Honorable Speaker, so be it. It ends all your cause. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, any bodily harm, any psychological harm, emotional harm, Honorable Speaker, must be condemned. Let us live in our society the way we are guarded for by the Constitution of Kenya and the way we are supposed to exist as Kenyans and as a people on this planet. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I support.
Member for Kisumu Town West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity, but for the records, the constituency is Kisumu West.
Not Town West.
Not Town West, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would have expected that...
The word town is expunged from the record.
Mr. Speaker, I would have expected that you'd know that constituency by the real name because of the past
I know it very well.
Electoral experiences that we've had between Ford Kenya and ODM. The constituency has always been represented by a member of Ford Kenya, but this time round, a member of ODM is actually representing that constituency.
Congratulations.
It is Kisumu West constituency. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for indulging me despite the fact that I don't have my card, and I'd like to make a comment on GBV. Mr. Speaker, as the Vice Chairperson of Kenya Women Parliamentarian Association, I'd like to thank you for extending that invitation to members of Parliament. This is because GBV is classless. It is experienced amongst the very elite in this society, and it is also experienced amongst the vulnerable groups. So the theme of this year's 16 days activism, Unite Against this Vice, is very appropriate, Mr. Speaker, because this is a vice that cannot be fought by only one side of the sexual divide, Mr. Speaker. So when we unite as members of Parliament, who are actually leaders in the society, when we unite as the elite members of this society, when we unite as the vulnerable members of this society, Mr. Speaker, we'd all be contributing to the end of this vice. This is because the Constitution dictates that every Kenyan, regardless of what sex you are, is equal and should be treated with dignity. But GBV denies victims that dignified opportunity, Mr. Speaker. So this is a case where if we unite as all Kenyans, we'd actually be furthering the effect of the Constitution that we passed in 2010. Mr. Speaker, once again, I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I want to welcome all the members to please be present tomorrow between 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And Mr. Speaker, we are counting on you as the leader of these chambers or National Assembly to actually be there and present yourself in person. We'd really appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Obo.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipatia nami nafasi nami nichangie katika hili janga la ukatili wa kijinsia. Bwana Spika, kwa hakika tunajua janga hili liko na limekuwa donda sugu. Watu wengi wamekuwa wamekipata shida hizi. Serikali imetumia njia nyingi kujaribu kupigana na janga hili, lakini bado hatujafikia pale inapotekana. Bwana Spika, kila station ya polisi inafaa kuwa na desk, dawati la ambalo litahudumia mambo ya jinsia, lakini paka sasa deski hizi hazijaweza kuwa na nguvu zile za kusaidia vizuri zaidi. Wamejaribu, lakini tunaomba zipate nguvu zaidi, tuwe na wanawake polisi ambao watakuwa kwenye hizi desk ili wasaidie wale kina mama ambao wanapata hizi shida za ukatili wa kijinsia. Bwana Spika, ningeomba nitoe ushauri. Ni kweli kina mama kaunti nzima wanapata shida hizi, lakini mama yule wa Nairobi anapata shida hizi, yule wa Lamu anapata shida zaidi kushinda yule mama wa Nairobi, kwa sababu Lamu zaidi upande wangu Lamu Mashariki usafiri ni tatizo. Lazima utumie mbinu zote za usafiri, lazima utumie barabara, lazima utumie ndege kwingine, lazima utumie pikipiki kwingine, lazima utumie boti. Sasa tatizo hili likimtokea mtu wa Ishakani, kupata usaidizi inakuwa ngumu zaidi kushinda yule wa hapa Nairobi. Bwana Spika, ningeomba ushauri katika moja ya ushauri wangu, yale yote yatakayokufanywa ihakikishwe ile helpline, line ya usaidizi ile inaitwa 1195 ile laini inasaidia sana katika hizi ukatili wa kijinsia. Ingekuwa ni muhimu serikali ipatie nguvu laini hiyo, kwa sababu ukiwa na tatizo unafaa kupiga hiyo namba. Nataka Wakenya wanisikie, hiyo namba ni muhimu. Time yote ukipata matatizo kama hayo, kama huwezi kufikia kwa hospitali, unafaa upige simu nambari hiyo 1195. Namba hiyo imekuwa nzuri sana, inatusaidia sana. Hata sisi wabunge sengine kama uko na tatizo na wapigia wanakueleza namna ya kufanya kama hujui. Lakini hawana uwezo wa kuwa paka na ndege, wa kuwa na vifaa vya usafiri. Laini hiyo ikiweza kupewa nguvu zaidi itasaidia sana. Manake haya matatizo sengine wanapambana paka na forces, inakuwa ngumu sana. kwa sababu pengine msichana amepewa biskuti kule au amepewa fruit za mikebe, anaona yeye ashafika, wanamtumia vibaya. Au mama amepigwa, pengine inakuwa shida kupambana na hizi cases nyingi. Lakini tukiwa na nguvu kutoka kwa serikali, na hii laini hii iko na watu wakubwa wa Safaricom, iko na ministry hapa OP, iko na USAID, tunaomba waitilie nguvu, iwe ni kitengo maalum peke yake kivyake, iweze kusaidia hizi kutoka mwanzo mpaka mwisho kokotini. Asante Bwana Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Tindi Mwale.
Asante sana Bwana Speaker. Bwana Speaker, pia mimi nitajitahidi niongee Kiswahili sanifu kama dadangu kutoka Lamu. Kwanza nitaanza na kukushukuru kama mwanakamati wa sheria iliyokabidhiwa. Nimeona mwenyekiti wangu hapa, sijui kama atapata muda, lakini kama mwanakamati nataka nikushukuru kwa uamuzi wako ulio wa busara sana, haswa ukizingatia maneno ya chombo cha kisheria. Chombo cha kisheria, Bwana Speaker, utapata Wakenya wengi wamehangaika mno kwa sababu ya kupata sheria ambayo imeletwa na chombo cha kisheria, lakini haikuji katika hili bunge letu ili tujadiliane kama wabunge ambao wameteuliwa na wananchi, na tujadiliane na tuone sheria gani mzuri na gani ambayo itadhuru wananchi. Kwa hivyo Bwana Speaker, mimi nataka nikushukuru, na pia nishukuru wenzangu ambao wameunga mkono hiyo uamuzi, na pia naunga mkono Bwana Speaker uamuzi kuhusu mambo ya jinsia. Jamii ambayo izingatii kutunza ama kuweka sheria ambayo inalinda wamama na wanadada haiwezi kanawiri. Kwa hivyo mimi naunga mkono, lakini pia Bwana Speaker, sisi pia kama wanaume tunaomba pia hiyo sheria ikue, kwa sababu siku hizi hata wanaume wanapigwa kwa manyumba, sio tu ati bibi ndio wanapigwa peke yake, pia vijana pia hao wanateseka. Tunataka tukue na ile jamii ambayo inazingatia maneno ambayo inaweza tupeleka mbele. Kwa hivyo Bwana Speaker, mimi nakuunga mkono kwa niaba ya kamati yetu. Mimi nakushukuru sana kwa uamuzi wako. Asante sana.
Member for Naivasha. Justice Kemei, you seem to be very restless. I'll give you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this chance to comment on GBV. Mr. Speaker, you know, maybe you don't know, let me inform you. In 9th Parliament, I was supposed to be the representative of rapists in Naivasha.
Of?
Because we had so many rapes until rapists, until I had to establish a safe house for our girls, which has been fully booked all the time. So I think as a society, we need to take this advocacy of GBV and put it in its right position. Mr. Speaker, I know I also established a gender desk, which is working overtime, and I really want to thank Naivasha Police because they have been very, very positive. Here we are fathers, we are mothers of both gender, boys and girls. I think this is where we need to start. Fathers here, please, and out there, take your boys with you wherever you go in mother's family. You know, you'll find, like Onambodede says, that teachers are women. Yes, they are women, most of them. And when you leave your children or the boys to be taken through by the mother, eventually you'll be complaining because the mother is going for a wedding, is going to the market, is going to this and these places. And eventually when they grow up, they don't want the mother's company. But then they don't know any other side. So please take them along because it's very important so that they start learning the manhood chores so that they become better husbands and they know they are not going to beat their wives and they're not going to insult them. So it's across the board. We need to take our boys with us. We need to take the girls in their rightful position. We need to advocate for gender-based violence, how bad it is. We really need to take it. It is really, really serious. that even when I'm sitting in the office, the men will shy away. You'll see the wife will come and complain about an incident, but the father would not come. Please, fathers, take along the boys as we take along the girls, and then we build a society that is responsive. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Last, Justice Kamei.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity you've given me, so that I can also add my voice on the two issues in which you've passed very, very good communication, Mr. Speaker. On the first one, Mr. Speaker, on the statutory instruments, the 2010 Constitution gives sovereign power to the people of this country. And that power to legislate, Mr. Speaker, is given to the National Assembly, to the Senate, indeed to the entire Parliament, to pass legislations. The import of statutory instruments, Mr. Speaker, is to enable ministries, to enable departments, to enable agencies pass certain issues that are of essence and which must be done immediately, Mr. Speaker. But then, Mr. Speaker, all those statutory instruments must come to Parliament for us to be able to give an input and to give them the force of law. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the Committee on Delegated Legislation to recall all statutory instruments that have been issued out there and which have not passed Parliament, so that Parliament can be able to weigh in on all of them. And I want to ask the Committee on Delegated Legislation again, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that we amend the 2013 Statutory Instruments Act so that we give timelines for which delegated legislation can lapse if they don't come to Parliament. I was suggesting, Mr. Speaker, that they can be enforced for a period of about 3 months, beyond which, if they don't come to Parliament, then they become null and void. Finally, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of gender-based violence. Violence at this age in time, Mr. Speaker, is primitive and abhorrible, and especially violence meted against against women. Mr. Speaker, we must stand up as the 13th Parliament, and we must stand up as a people to say any kind of violence meted against girls and women, we stand against it, Mr. Speaker. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. I want to be as brief as that so that maybe my colleagues can also get the chance to air their views. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member, I want to end here. I'll give you 1 minute, Honourable Member. I had wanted Justice Kamei to be the last. Give the Honourable Member.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This comes as a relief to Kenyans. I'm happy that you have communicated the statutory instruments. These people have been using, misusing these instruments wrongly, coming up with rules and regulations that are affecting the whole country, affecting the citizens, and, without necessarily passing the house that is supposed to come up with laws in this country. This is the only house that is mandated to come up with laws. But this has been a problem, especially, when Central Bank came up with the rules where they were saying you cannot withdraw more than 1 million shillings, or when you are depositing maybe even 1 million or 2, you are asked to so many questions that are unnecessary. I think this will now be put a stop, and it will never be used again. This should be the only house that passes laws. The other thing about gender-based violence, I'm sure the house is fully aware that this happens to both male and female. It doesn't only happen to female. People think when one talks about gender-based violence, the only thing that comes up to your mind is female. But male are also beaten thoroughly in their houses. That also need to be considered, and that has to come to an end. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Clerk, next order.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader. Majority Leader, we are on order number 5.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And since I didn't get a chance to contribute on the other one, let me also take this opportunity, Honorable Speaker, to appreciate the members of the delegation from Baringo County Assembly, led by their leader of majority, the Honorable Talam, and whip, the Honorable Kibet, who I worked with some years back at the Standard Group. And Honorable Speaker, I hear the member for Tiati asking me to appreciate the minority leader and whip from the oldest party in the country. But to appreciate that the Baringo County Assembly has indeed set a very good example to other county assemblies, being an assembly that has demonstrated that it can act independently. And I commend them because they are the only county assembly in this country who stood firm against BBI in the last regime. Honorable Speaker, I therefore beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, November 30th, 2022, afternoon sitting. Yes. 1, an addendum to submission of the 12th batch of nominees to the National Government Constituency Development Fund committees for National Assembly approval for Isiolo South constituency. 2, reports of the Auditor General and financial statements of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. Special Economic Zones Authority, the Nairobi Metropolitan Area Transport Authority, the Kenya Roads Board Operations, the Kenya Yearbook Editorial Board, the Western Kenya Rice Mills Limited, Aldai Technical Training Institute, the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, Kaiboi Technical Training Institute, Pwani University, Kisii Teaching and Referral Hospital, National Hospital Insurance Fund, Technical University of Kenya, Kenya Accreditation Service, National Quality Control Laboratory, and finally the Kenya Film Corporation. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Majority Leader. David Speaker.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, November 30th, the year 2022. Report on the 61st session of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States Parliamentary Assembly and the 42nd session of the ACP and EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly held in Maputo, Mozambique from the 25th of October to the 2nd of November.
Next, Chair Select Committee on Delegated Legislation.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday, November 30th, 2022. The report of the Select Committee on Delegated Registration on its consideration of the Public Finance Management Public Investment Regulation 2022 into bracket legal notice number 54 of 2022.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Energy. Okay, I'm told the chair is not ready. Under order number 6, call out order number 6, clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Honorable Gladys Boss.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion, that this House notes the report of the 61st session of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States Parliamentary Assembly and the 42nd session of the ACP EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly laid on the table of this House on Wednesday, November 30th, 2022. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Next, Chairperson Delegated legislation.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice to the following motion that this House adopt the report of the Committee on Delegated Legislation on its consideration of the Public Finance Management Regulation 2022 laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 30th November 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 24, subsection 4 of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, approves the Public Finance Management Regulation 2022, published as a legal notice number 54 of 1st April 2022. Thank you.
Next, member, Chairman, Departmental Committee on Energy. Okay, we defer that. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
We go to questions, honorable members. Member for Kuresoi, the Honorable Joseph Tanui. Question deferred. Member for Kaspul, Honorable Ongondo Were. Is he in the House?
Yeah,
Yes,
President,
member.
Honorable Speaker, thank you for giving me opportunity to ask question number 063 of 2022 directed to Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum. Roman 1, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the causes of persistent power blackouts and power surge into Yugis town in Kaspul constituency that have led to massive losses for the business community and damages to household electronic devices? Roman 2, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the status report for the last mile connectivity programs in Kaspul constituency? Roman 3, could the Cabinet Secretary explain when the street lighting projects under the last mile connectivity programs on the following roads in Oyugis town and its environs as expected to be completed? Oyugis Kosele, Number Karabok Kawere Market, Oyugis Secret Town, Oyugis Kuoyo, Oyugis Manyora Market, Oyugis Nyangiela Dole and Ombek Market, Oyugis Gamba and Oyugis Rodika Kuom and Ruga Markets in Oyugis town. Roman 4, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the status of the electric power connectivity to schools and learning institutions in Kaspul constituency? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Were. The Chairman of Energy will respond accordingly. Member for Wajir County, Fatuma Jiao.
Thank you, Bona Speaker. I have a question to the Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum regarding the power blackouts of Wajir. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain the causes of the frequent power blackouts and outages in Wajir County, detailing strategies that the ministry has put in place to curb the said incidents? 2, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the measures that the ministry has put in place to ensure prompt deployment of Kenya Power and Lighting Company technicians to address incidents of power blackouts and outages in Wajir County to minimize its negative effect on health facilities and businesses in the area? 3, could the Cabinet Secretary outline the measures put in place by the ministry to either fast-track connection of Wajir County to the national grid or enhance the capacity of the off-grid plant. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next question by Naomi Wako, member for Marsabit County, is deferred on her request. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, approval of nominees to various national government constituencies development fund committees.
Honourable members, as we go to that order, chairmen of committees who have concluded their vetting process of PSS should be advised in the course of the sitting to table their reports as and when they are ready. Musa Sirma.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House approves the nominees to various national government constituency development fund committees tabled and or appended in the order paper, Mr. Speaker, that this House adopts the report of the Select Committee of the National Government Constituency Development Fund laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, November 19, 2022, and pursuant to provisions of Section 434 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act 2015, and paragraphs 5, 2, and 10 of the National...
I'm advised that you started by saying this House approves.
No.
Your motion says adopts.
Adopts.
Yes.
Yes.
Can the record
it's
be
amended
accordingly? Go
yeah, that this House adopts the report of the Select Committee. Let me start again, Mr. Speaker. Yes. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this House adopts the report of the Select Committee on the National Government Constituency Development Fund laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, November 29, 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 434 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act 2015 and paragraphs 5, 2, and 10 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Regulations 2016, approves the list of nominees for appointment of the following 103 constituency committees and of National Government Constituency Development Fund. Mr. Speaker, this is, I think, the last big batch of names or committees which have been brought to my committee. And Mr. Speaker, we have only 5.
The Honorable Christopher Aseka, member for Quisero. What is out of the Honorable Christopher Aseka, member for Quisero? What is out of order, Honorable Member?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the chair name the constituencies that is saying that have not submitted because they are delaying the whole process?
Honorable Chair, would you like to make a comment on that?
Mr. Speaker, I'll not name the constituencies. I've only told you there are 5. You can do your due diligence, Mr. Honorable Member.
The Honorable Wangwe, what is out of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Madam Speaker, I feel maybe I would ask, is the chair in order, Honorable Speaker, to refer to you and the way you look like and the way everyone sees that you are a lady as Mr. Speaker, Honorable Speaker.
I will allow the Honorable Member to proceed.
Thank you.
I'm sure that he has not.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I think it has happened in between the transition between myself and the,
yes,
the substantive speaker. So you may proceed.
Madam Speaker.
There are so many points of order, Honorable Members. Honorable Kamket,
yes,
what is out of order?
Madam Speaker, you heard the words the chairman of CDF used, that those who had
members who are not given their names are lazy and fit to hold office. No. Madam Speaker, the answer can bear me witness. He used the words lazy. Yes, lazy. Is the member here in order? Don't you think, Madam Speaker, that she is imputing improper motive on the members? There could be difficult circumstances those members are facing, political circumstances on the ground. But the words he has used, that members are lazy, he must be made to withdraw. And Madam Speaker, while on that, it's important that the member names those constituencies, because back down there in Tiati, my people may be thinking that I'm one of them, yet I was among the first. So it is important to name those people.
Is it all on the same matter, on the word lazy? So since all the point of orders I'm seeing here, which are 3, are referring to the same matter of lazy, I would like to ask the chair to make a comment on that.
Madam Speaker, I think for the ease of the work of this House, let me withdraw the word lazy, and the word which should have been is they have not been able to do their due diligence on their duty in the constituencies. It's the same one.
The Honorable Wilberforce Oundo, member for Finyula.
The mic is faulty. Honorable Speaker, I think the chair of the committee is misleading the House and is misleading the nation. Number one, Honorable Speaker, I don't know which members is referring to. If they are members of Parliament, the Honorable Speaker is completely out of order. The NGCDF Act of 2015, the members of Parliament have no role at all in submitting the names of members who sit in the CDFC. That's the work of the Fund Accounts Manager. Honorable Speaker, can you please request the member to put the record straight so that we don't continuously confuse Kenyans and allow busybodies to exploit the misunderstanding that seems to be now the fodder of all the busybodies in this country. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Chair, withdraw and apologize.
Of course, I withdraw and apologize, Madam Speaker.
So let's make progress, honorable members.
So close the matter. Madam Speaker, I want also to inform the House that the first Gazette notice of the 123 constituencies was gazetted today. And we are in the process of getting funding very soon. In fact, possibly this week will be the first batch. And Mr. Speaker, now it has changed again. The change is too much. We should be notified, Mr. Speaker, that all this has happened because we want the children of Kenya, who are the beneficiaries of the school fees which is going to be given out in January, to go to school, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we want the members, as they go for recess from tomorrow, they will ask their committees and the fund managers to do the necessary arrangements so that we have a good organization in the constituencies. Although they are not participating, but of course they are the fathers of the constituencies, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, finally, I would like to recognize my MCAs, or the members of the County Assembly of Baringo, who have come in today to visit, and for sure our parliamentary studies school is going to do a lot, because many people have not understood the kind of school which is which this parliament
has made, which is going to assist the young legislators in this country to reform and make this country better. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
Be seconded by who? Oh, who's going to second you?
May I ask Honorable Wangwe?
Honorable Wangwe, proceed and second. MP for Navakholo. Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wish to second the very able report as moved by the chair of NGCDF, and just add on, as a rider on the last point which he has made, the Honorable Speaker, it appears like the government is moving with speed to make sure that, Honorable Speaker, the kids of this country see good education paid by CDF. Honorable Speaker, CDF facilitates each and every corner of this country. And once CDF is up and running, I'm pretty sure the government will sit comfortable and see to it that the CBC program is really put to implementation and each Kenyan will be at home. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I beg to second.
Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House adopts the report of the Select Committee on the National Government Constituency Development Fund laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, November the 29th, 2022, and pursuant to the provisions of Section 43, subsection 4 of the National Government Constituency Fund Act of 2015 and paragraphs 5, sub 2 and 10 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Regulations 2016. Approves the list of nominees for the appointment to the following 103 constituency committees and of the National Government Constituency Development Fund. Now we can proceed with the debate. I propose the question. There is nobody. Okay. You're here. You proceed. Proceed. Who is there? Proceed. Order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity just to contribute a bit. Thank you, Chair, for tabling the remaining of the names of the committees. Those have been ready for gazettement. What I would like to ask, Mr. Speaker, is that the names should now be gazetted so that a circular can now be sent to the fund accounts manager for the proposals to be made for the projects. Before they are gazetted, there are no proposals which can be brought in to the board. So the chair should move with speed to make sure that the board has gazetted the names of the committee members of each constituency. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Honorable members, you cannot put the question. Okay. You understand, you perfectly well know that we cannot put the question. The tradition of the House has changed in the last 10 years. You cannot put the question if there's no quorum. This is deferred to tomorrow. So you better be all here tomorrow with more than the and this to be put on the order paper? To be put on, yeah, what's your point of order? The Honorable
Speaker.
Yes.
My name is Dr. Jambo Ondo, MP for Funyula.
Yes, I know.
MP for County.
Funyula. Yes.
Yes, and that is one of the most important constituencies in this country.
Proceed.
Honorable Speaker, I stand on standing order number 53 and request that we defer the putting of the question as required under standing order 53. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Not because of quorum.
Motion which may be moved. Order. Honorable members, the mover to reply. Proceed, the mover to reply.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the two members who have contributed on the way forward in terms of how the CDF should be, and Honorable Mwalio has really given us the way forward. He's a member of my committee, and for sure we need to gazette these names so that we can bring up, we can ask the fund managers with the committee to work tirelessly and very fast to bring in their projects so that the benefits which we are looking forward for is achieved at the shortest time possible in this country. Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply.
Order, honorable members. The chair has accepted the point of order that was raised by the honorable member of parliament for Funyura, and I defer putting the question to tomorrow afternoon. The question will be put tomorrow afternoon. Next order.
Order number 9, Committee of the Whole House, the County Government Additional Allocations. Number 2, Bill, Senate Bill number 4 of 2022.
Budget, we're waiting for you. Business cannot start without you. We are considering. Honorable members, we are considering now the county government additional allocations number 2 bill, Senate Bill number 4 of 2022 in committee of the whole house.
Clauses 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Honorable members, I propose the question that clauses 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 be part of the bill. There are no amendments on this one. Now I put the question that clauses 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 be part of the bill. As many of the opinion say aye. As many of contrary opinion say no. The ayes have it.
First schedule.
Honorable members, I propose the question that the first schedule be the schedule of the bill. There is an amendment by the Honorable the MP for Mara.
Thank you so much, Chair. Chair, I'd like to move the amendment to the first schedule to the county government additional allocation number 2, Bill Senate Bill number 4.
Honorable members, that amendment, I hope you have engaged the Honorable Kareki Mbuki.
Yeah.
The amendment is subject to Article 114 of the Constitution. Can I have a copy of the Constitution? Article 114 of the Constitution says expressly, let me see here, let me have it. 114 of the Constitution, 114. This is a money bill. A money bill may not deal with any matter other than those listed in the definition of a money bill enclosed. If in the opinion of the Speaker of the National Assembly, 2, a motion makes provision for a matter listed in the definition of a money bill, the Assembly may proceed only in accordance with the recommendations of the relevant committee of the Assembly after taking into account the views of the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance. The chair will have to, the chair budget will have to put light on that. Chair budget, proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. We are private to the amendment by the Honorable Kareke Mbuki. It came to the committee, and Mr. Chairman, the committee checked on the issue, and we don't have a problem with the proposed amendment. Because, Mr. Speaker, just to put more light into it, Mr. Chairman, just to put more light into it, there are 5 counties that were to benefit from a conditional grant from the national government in regards to building their headquarters. The 5 counties, Tharaka Nithi is part of the 5 counties. Unfortunately, in the allocation of the state monies, Mr. Speaker or Mr. Chair, and with the rationalization of the budget as we are doing, only Tharaka Nithi was affected up to nil, and therefore we thought it is good, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, that we have all the counties share the available resources equally, because they have made a lot of progress in terms of construction.
Yes, fair enough. In that case, the mover to move the amendment.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, I'd like to move the amendment to the first schedule of the county government additional allocation number 2, Senate Bill number 4 of 2022, as per the under paper. On Chair, as articulated by the Chair of Budget, the amendment seeks to ensure that Tharaka Nithi County, which is one of the 5 counties that is supposed to benefit from the additional allocation of the construction of the county headquarters, since it has been left out, the available resources of 163 million being divided across the 5 counties so that Tharaka Nithi County can be part of those who are benefiting. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Fair enough. In that case, I propose the question that the schedule be amended as proposed. I propose the question that the schedule be amended as proposed. So anybody who wants to contribute to that can contribute now. If you don't have anybody who wants to contribute, then I'll put the question. Chair, budget, proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. As you look at the bill as it came from the Senate, the 5 counties that were to benefit from the construction of headquarters, just to bring members to speed, these are counties that by the time we had this model of having county governments, some of our counties actually inherited the former DC's offices to be their headquarters. Unfortunately, there were 5 counties that neither had the premises either to renovate or occupy. And the national government gave a conditional grant for the past 6 years they have been receiving. Mr. Speaker, some of the counties involved is Isiolo, the other one is Lamu, the other one is Nyandarua, the other one is Tana River, and the last one is Tharaka Nithi. They have been receiving this funding, conditional grant from the national government. And Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, this time around, Tharaka Nithi, which has progressed quite well in terms of construction, was left out in regards to the rationalization of the 300 billion we are trying to save. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I would recommend that the available resources, and that is our feeling as the committee, be shared amongst the counties, because even the one that was left out has really progressed in terms of percentage of construction.
Fair enough. And now put the question that the schedule be amended as proposed. As men out of opinion say aye. Aye. As men out of contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. I now put the question that the schedule as amended be the schedule of the bill. As men out of opinion say aye. As men out of contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Honorable members, I propose the question that the second schedule be the schedule of the bill. I now put the question that the second schedule be the schedule of the bill. As many after opinion say aye. As many contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it.
Close to.
Honorable members, I propose the question that clause 2 be part of the bill. I now put the question that clause 2 be part of the bill. As many of the opinions say aye, as many of the contrary opinions say no or nay, the ayes have it.
Clause 1.
Honorable members, I propose the question that clause 1 be part of the bill. Honorable members, I now put the question that clause 1 be part of the bill. As many of the opinions say aye, as many of the contrary opinions say nay, the ayes have it. Honorable members, we have finished the consideration.
Title.
What is the title? Honorable members, I now put the question that the title be the title of the bill. As many of the opinions say aye, as many of the contrary opinions say nay, the ayes have it. We have now finished the consideration, honorable members. I now call upon the mover to report. Give him the mic, please, the Honorable Chair of the Budget Committee.
Honorable Chairperson, I beg to move that the committee do report to the House its consideration of the county government's additional allocation, number 2, bill, Senate Bill number 4 of 2022, and its approval thereof without amendments. Oh, sorry, with amendments.
With amendments, yes.
Yeah, because
right,
of the amendment from the
Yes.
member for Mara.
Yes. Honorable members, I'll now put the question for reporting. I put the question, which is that the committee do report to the House its considerations of the county government's additional allocations, number 2, Senate Bill number 4 of 2022, and its approval thereof with amendments. As many of the opinions say aye.
Aye.
As many of the contrary opinions say nay. The ayes have it. I go back. Where's my card? Oh, yes. Yeah, what do I do? Switch off this. What have you done to my mic? Oh, yeah. I call on the chairperson to report to the House.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to report that the committee of the Whole House has considered the county government additional allocation number 2, Senate Bill number 4 of 2022, and approved the same with amendment.
The mover of the bill to move agreement with the report.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I beg to move that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. I also request that Honorable Abdrahman to second the motion for agreement with the report of the committee of the whole House.
Honorable Abdullah, you have the floor. Yes, proceed. Next to you. Next to that one.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I stand to second the bill.
Fair enough. I think we are through, except with the putting the question, proposing the question for adoption. So we will. This is deferred. I will propose the question, but of course putting the question is deferred. It will be deferred. I propose the question, which is that the House do agree with the committee in the said report. I have proposed it, but I'm not going to put the question. I will put the question for obvious reasons. Tomorrow, is it okay tomorrow? Tomorrow it's going to be on the order paper for this final bit of putting the question. Next order.
Order number 10, session of paper number 2, motion, session on paper number 2 of 2021 on the national agricultural policy.
The leader of the majority. Where is the leader of the majority? Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, where is your majority leader? This is the only business left for the rest of the day, and it's not going to reflect it. Very good. Do you wish to move on his behalf?
Mr. Speaker, I see the whip is here with consultation, Mr. Speaker. I think it's a business we can do with consultations. That's 1 minute, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Whip, are you ready to move on behalf of the leader of the majority? What's your point of order, the Honorable Millie Odhiambo? Last time I knew you were MP from Bita. I don't know where you are now.
I'm the MP for Suba North.
Proceed.
It's the same beta, but now the name has changed to Suba North.
Proceed.
Just to acknowledge that we are Subas. Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to indicate while they were still worried about what to do, that if they didn't have any issue that understanding order number 1, we can discuss the growing insecurity in Suba North. Because we have had 2 young men who have been killed in the last 2 weeks. But unfortunately, they've...
the whip is ready to move.
The whip is ready, but
Proceed.
otherwise I would have raised the issue of the insecurity in Suba North. Thank you.
Move the motion. You've made your point, and I'm sure the people of Suba are watching how serious you are when it comes to representing them here. So proceed, Honorable Wako, Naomi Wako.
Thank you.
Oh, that's majority. Proceed. Order. Do you wish to move on? Do you wish to move this one yourself, or you allow your whip to move? Proceed, Madam Whip. You have got that authorization from authority from your own majority leader. Proceed. Order. Honorable Naomi, could you please take your seat? The majority leader has additional papers that have come late, and he intends to table them. Proceed, Honorable Ichungwa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for your indulgence. And Honorable Speaker, the whip who was here was well briefed and ready to move the session of paper.
It's not in your tradition to be away when you're supposed to move something, so I understood you must have been behind here doing something else.
Yes, Honorable Speaker. I was actually following up on some papers that we were waiting for to be laid.
Proceed.
And with your indulgence, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Wednesday, November 30th, 2022, afternoon sitting. One is a legal notice number 214 of 2022 relating to the statutory instruments, exemption from expiry, regulations 2022, and the explanatory memorandum from the Parliamentary Service Commission. And 2, legal notice number 218 of 2022 relating to the statutory instruments, exemption from expiry, regulations 2022, and the explanatory memorandum from the Office of the Attorney General and Department of Justice. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay this before the table of the House as I invite the Deputy Chief Whip to move the session of paper.
Proceed, Madam Deputy Chief Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I beg to move the National Agriculture Policy 2021. Honorable Speaker, the agriculture sector is a major contributor to the country's gross domestic product, GDP, employs over 80% of Kenya's rural workforce, and provides for more than 15.5% of formal employment. It further contributes to GDP through manufacturing, distribution, and services sector, and accounts for 69.7% of the total export earnings in 2018. The Kenya Vision 2030 recognizes the significance of agriculture towards its goals and aims to achieve an average gross domestic product growth rate of 10% per year up to 2030. Honorable Speaker, broad objective of this policy is to improve food and nutrition security and maximize incomes through optimum utilization of resources in the agriculture sector. In actualizing the broad objective, the national and county governments will ensure that households' national food and nutrition security are attained through innovative and cost-effective measures linked to the country's long-term development goals. Honorable Speaker, the goal of the policy are, number 1, to transform crop, livestock, and fisheries production into the commercially oriented enterprises that ensures sustainable food and nutrition security. Mr. Speaker, we know very well that this is very important for us, and especially now that Kenyans are going through this drought, and we don't have enough food in our country, such that we are forced even to buy food from outside. Number B, it is to provide a framework for the support and intensification of cooperation and consultation between the national and county government and among other stakeholders for enhanced development of crops, livestock, and fisheries. Honorable Speaker, the guiding principles of this policy includes A, support and strengthening of the food, health, and nutrition security interrelationship. B, effective and sustainable agriculture development. C, a market-oriented and modern technology-driven agricultural economy. D, promotion of stable public-private partnership for development of the crops, livestock, and fisheries subsector. E, compliance with the international standards in development and growth of crops, livestock, and fisheries subsector. F, promotion of agricultural ecological zone-guided production with improved capacity to predict and respond to shocks. G, provide for economically viable, socially equitable, and environmentally suitable use of land for crops, livestock, and fisheries. H, promotion of fair trading practices along the crops, livestock, and fisheries value chains. And I, utilization of science, indigenous knowledge, and resources. Mr. Speaker, other guidelines outlined in the policy includes strengthening intergovernmental relationship, agricultural institution, development institution linkages, and enhancing collaboration in order to create harmony and synergy in developing agricultural resources, harnessing resources for improved agricultural output in partnership with private sector, and introducing appropriate financing and insurance system in the agricultural sector, promoting demand-driven research and timely dissemination of research finding in the agricultural sector, and conserving biodiversity of different crops, livestock, and fish. Honorable Speaker, this policy undertakes to address the identified challenges in the agricultural sector by providing guidelines to the national and county governments. It specifies the different roles towards ensuring household, national food and nutrition security, food safety, increasing agricultural production and productivity using appropriate good quality and affordable inputs, facilitating access to premium, domestic, regional, and international markets, reducing post-harvest losses while promoting agribusiness value addition and product development. Honorable Speaker, the policy will be implemented through a legal and institutional framework that is in existence. Thematic policies and strategies will be developed to address specific subsector requirement and for better implementation of this policy with a monitoring and evaluation framework which will be developed so as an integral component to ensure the policy objectives are achieved in a cost-effective, coordinated, and harmonized approach at both national and county levels. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the policy is in line with the relevant provisions of the Constitution and provides a clear and roadmap to the realization of the Vision 2030 agricultural goals and targets. With those few remarks, I move and urge members to support it. I thank you.
Who is going to second you?
I request Majority Leader to second.
Proceed,
Thank you.
Majority Leader, and second your own whip, Deputy Whip.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I rise, Honorable Speaker, to second this session of paper number 2 of 2021 on the National Agricultural Policy. And as has been clearly articulated, Honorable Speaker, by the Whip, the Honorable Naomi Wako, Honorable Speaker, is that this policy speaks to one of the key areas of our economy, our agriculture. Honorable Speaker, if you listen carefully, if members listen carefully, there is an appreciation that agriculture is indeed one of the functions that were devolved to our county governments. But there needs to be a clear policy, a national policy on how we transact business between the national government and our county governments. And policy issues, Honorable Speaker, under the new constitution being harbored in the ministries, such as this one for agriculture, Honorable Speaker, it's therefore important that the ministry does develop a session of paper like this that will guide us as a nation on how we grow our agriculture and make it meaningful, not only to farmers, but also to our economy and to the millions of consumers of food who are the population, Honorable Speaker, that have sent us to represent them in this House. Honorable Speaker, this session of paper speaks to issues to do with value addition and how we improve productivity in our country, and is in line, Honorable Speaker, with the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto. And I remember, Honorable Speaker, as we traverse the country during the campaign season, we engage with millions of Kenyans across all constituencies. And I was particularly lucky, Honorable Speaker, to be present in a number of agricultural counties like the county of Bomet, where farmers were very articulate on their needs and their aspirations in terms of their agricultural aspirations, how they want agriculture improved both by the national and the county governments, and the roles that each of the two levels of government would play. In my own county in Kiambu, Honorable Speaker, farmers, coffee farmers, tea farmers, our dairy farmers, those farmers who, like myself, rear pigs. And Honorable Speaker, by virtue of your religion, I know that may not be music to your ears, but pig rearing, Honorable Speaker, was one of the most lucrative farming activities in my county and indeed in many counties in this country. But following the death or the collapse of the Uplands bacon factory and almost the monopolization of that sector by one or two players in the industry, Honorable Speaker, farmers are then left at the mercy of a few monopolistic farms, Honorable Speaker. I don't to call them cartels because they are corporates and farms. But they operate in a manner that is almost equivalent to how cartels operate, because they're also in agricultural production and therefore determine the price of commodities for farmers, for even other business people who would act as middlemen in this trade. And Honorable Speaker, this kind of behavior pervades not just in the pig rearing or the pig industry, pig and meat processing industry, Honorable Speaker, but even in our tea, our coffee sector. Honorable Speaker, earlier you heard the member for Githunguri speak about the Statutory Instruments Act, and regulations that came were brought to this House in the last Parliament, Honorable Speaker, and regulations that have in a very negative manner affected how our coffee farmers make an earning, and to an extent also taken away corporations that were otherwise state corporations. And the story of KPCU is a story for another day, Honorable Speaker. But I'm saying this, Honorable Speaker, because agriculture being the backbone of our economy, and since we were in school, we were told that this is an agricultural-based economy, that agriculture is a backbone of our economy. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, if our economy, something has gone wrong with our economy, then it has everything to do with what has gone wrong with our agricultural sector. And that's why it was important to have a national policy and a sessional paper that speaks to how government intends to make agriculture pay for farmers. And Honorable Speaker, as we said, from the bottom up. And from the bottom up, Honorable Speaker, I want to assure members that indeed this sessional paper speaks to some of the issues that were very well articulated in the Kenya Kwanza Manifesto, things that are already being done in terms of facilitating farmers to access cheaper inputs through the subsidized fertilizer program that has already started, and farmers in many parts of this country that were enjoying the short rains, Honorable Speaker, have benefited from this program. to issues to do with marketing and value addition of agricultural produce, Honorable Speaker. This sessional paper speaks to them. It also speaks to issues to do with extension services and the functions that county governments must play in ensuring that extension services are available to our farmers, those who are in crop development or crop farming, those who are in animal husbandry, that they get extension services to make sure that they get the right seeds, they get the right varieties of animals, Honorable Speaker, that they can rear. Honorable Speaker, because I see I'm short of time, allow me to urge members to support this sessional paper and pass it to enable our country move to the next level, Honorable Speaker. As I said, remembering that agriculture is one of our core and key pillars in the development of our country and dying economy. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I beg to second.
Honorable members, I now propose the question that this House adopt sessional paper number 2 of 2021 on the national agricultural policy laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, February the 8th, 2022. Nobody wants to contribute? The Honorable Julius Sunkuli, I see your name here. Yeah, he's here. Go ahead, proceed, Julius Sunkuli.
No, Mr. Speaker, I wish to make a few comments about this national policy. To start with, it's a sessional paper, and I don't know, Mr. Speaker, what the exact status of sessional papers are in this country. I know that the last paper that we all remember is sessional paper number 10, which was crafted by the late Tom Mboya of 1965. That one defined a policy on African socialism, which we still remember up to now. And it was done by the Kenyatta government, the first Kenyatta, being the government that brought independence into Kenya. Subsequently, we have been producing sessional papers. And I don't know whether these are white papers, which are waiting, which is one stage before legislation, or whether it's just a statement that is going to gather dust in the libraries or bookshops. I don't know what it is, Mr. Speaker. And what perplexes me more is the current sessional paper. This sessional paper was first tabled in this House in February 2022. That means that it is a paper that was crafted by the Jubilee government. And it has been adopted by the Kenya Kwanza government. I would have loved to hear the leader of government business, or indeed the mover of the motion, relating the policies that are in this sessional paper to the policies and the plan of Kenya Kwanza. Because every time I hear a statement being made, it does not seem to me like the Kenya Kwanza government adopted the policies of the Jubilee government. So here we are, Mr. Speaker. We are discussing a document that was drafted by the former government and is going to be implemented by this government, or rather it's been adopted by this government. It still begs a question in my head as to, therefore, what is the status of sessional papers? After we have passed this paper, which is very clear we are going to pass it, what is the government going to do with this paper? Having asked that, however, Mr. Speaker, so that it does not become a rhetorical question, I would like to say that the policies which are drafted in the paper are quite enlightening. They are good for ventilation. And I'm happy for a change that the sessional paper has dedicated a good part of it on livestock. And that the development of livestock is one of the things that are being discussed in it. In earlier sessional papers, in earlier policies of government, agriculture has been taken to mean farms and arable land and commodities that are gotten from farmers. But it is important that this document has recognized livestock as a means of economic development for this country. I wish to beg that this policy be implemented in a very serious way. Livestock is a way of life. And our land, the land on which we graze our animals, must always continue to be treated as such. Because some people look at our land and say that it is idle. Our land is for production of livestock. We need to emphasize on the Kenya Meat Commission and other markets that will help us market our commodities, livestock commodities. Mr. Speaker, livestock is a way of life for a lot of people. It contributes to about 12% of our economy, and we should therefore pay a lot of attention to it. And I want to urge the government that now that you have adopted this paper, please bring these things to reality.
The member Faldai.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise in support of the agricultural policy that is being tabled today. Kenya is an agricultural economy, and as we've seen from the statistics that have been given, it contributes to a very big percentage in terms of our GDP, and that GDP is what gives our country the income or the necessary income that this country requires. If we look at agriculture, from the time immemorial to today, we find that many agricultural products have fallen by the wayside. We take an example of pyrethrum. And pyrethrum used to be a very big cash cow and income earner in this country some time back, and today we don't have pyrethrum in our farms. Come to a product like sugarcane. Sugarcane has been suffering. It's been a product that has really suffered. And coming to coffee. Coffee is a product or a crop that also has a lot of issues in this market. The tea sector, where I come from as well, and the tea growing sector, the farmers are really crying in terms of the pricing and the prices of tea and tea products. Maize farming is another product. We saw the other day that the maize farmers are crying and saying that we need our maize bought. This policy, if implemented, will allow the guaranteed minimum returns that any of these farmers, when they go up to farm their produce, they know that the minimum they are going to get from these farms are going to be A, B, C, and D. And this policy will also allow sustainability, not only for our farmers, but it will also give us sustainability in terms of our GDP as a country. So this policy comes in handy, and it has come at the right time, because we know that agriculture is devolved and policy is still at the national level. So the link between the national government and the county government and the county governments in terms of implementation of agriculture, which is what is our mainstay in this country, will really come a long way in helping us have a proper infrastructure and a proper system that any farmer will benefit from the produce or the agricultural produce that they have. We find that this policy also recognizes some of the treaties and some of the regional blocks that we have, because a lot of the agricultural products that we produce go outside the country to international markets, and the regional blocks, which could become our main markets, are not considered in terms of agricultural produce. I take tea, for example. This is because I come from a tea growing area. Africa is a very good market for our tea, but our tea will be sold to other international markets. Yet Africa, if we added value to that tea,
could actually get to the tables of the African table at a far better price for the farmer. So this agricultural policy will help us and will come in handy so that when we are negotiating the treaties that we are going to negotiate with other countries, we know that the policy framework that has been put in place will help us as a country to be able to benefit from most of the agricultural produce that we make. We realize that most of the agreements that we enter into, the farmers are forced to enter or to buy produce and chemicals that may be too expensive, and the price that the farmer is given at the end becomes not economically viable. But as a country, if we have our policy, we know that the guaranteed minimum return will allow that this farmer gets the inputs at a fairly good price and to guarantee that revenue that they need to get at the end of the product. So I stand to support this policy, and we look forward to the implementation of this policy so that the country can benefit, and also the common mwananchi, the farmer, can benefit, especially my farmer from Aldai constituency. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The MP for Wajir West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute to this session on paper number 2 on the National Agricultural Policy. This policy is long overdue. I support the policy as an individual, as a farmer, and as a livestock keeper. Most of the policies in livestock and bills that are in place today have been has been formulated before 1963. No new legislation, no new policies apart from this has ever been introduced in this House after 1963. So, therefore, it is area that is been neglected for a while, and we need to have policies like this for a while. This policy will open up markets. It will open up the benefits of the livestock sector. It will allow the livestock farmer in Wajir West to access market, to take his to get produce, to take it the animal products to the market and to gain from it. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is an issue that we need to address urgently so that people should benefit the soonest possible. I want to also urge this House to kindly help or support the bill, the livestock bill that will be introduced in this House very soon, which will put in place the livestock marketing board and other necessary policies and legislation that are needed to take the livestock sector in a greater height. The livestock sector has been greatly affected by both natural disasters and neglect from the government side and even this House, which actually did not sufficiently address. We don't believe today, or this country is not taking seriously the issue of livestock. They don't think livestock is contributing to anything in this country. Livestock is one of the major contributors, and it is one of the main main income earners in this country. I believe the efforts that were put into only agriculture, if it could have been reciprocated and could have been equally done the same, the livestock keepers could have been better than the agricultural producers in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the policy. Thank you.
The MP for Suba-North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to support this policy, and in supporting, I wish to indicate that, Mr. Speaker, ordinarily the policy should be coming before the law, but because we already have a legal framework in relation to a lot of the issues dealing with agriculture, what would be required is then to relook at some of the laws to ensure conformity with this policy. Mr. Speaker, one of the things or one of the objectives that's been mentioned is the policy seeks to transform crop, livestock, and fish production. Mr. Speaker, as a fisherwoman, I want to talk to certain issues. But first of all, I just want to indicate that as a country, we need to think about diversification. We are thinking the same way that we have thought over years, and that's why I think Honorable Sukuli was talking about sessional paper number 10, and many of us are still stuck. I think it was 1965, I can't remember when, before I was born. But if we are able to think about diversification, like I saw at some point, Nyeri people were being persuaded to plant, or rather to eat fish, and they've actually started doing that very well. I think there's nothing stopping the people from my side of the world in embracing other things, including coffee. There are areas in my area that coffee can do well. But because we don't think that way, sometimes it's a problem. Mr. Speaker, one of my classmates, Bernard Michael, wrote to me something, and I think I want to think about this in terms of diversification and innovation. And he said that he had an opportunity a long time to work in my constituency with the Danida. And he said he had in mind introducing the idea of coconut, both as an economic crop as well as aesthetics along the lake shores, which extends all the way from Uhuru to Karachuonyo. The project was frustrated because it was supported by Danida, that then left. But if you look at some of the issues that is raising, there are things that we don't normally think about. If you are talking about Homa Bay County, we are thinking about potatoes, we are thinking about fish, we are thinking about maize, when we can actually diversify to coconut. And some of the things that is suggesting we look at is identification of existing trees, tree nurseries with sufficient water supply, coconut seedling propagation training, supply of coconut seeds and propagation, community sensitization and dissemination of values of coconut, distribution and field planting. And Mr. Speaker, this even gives some of the things that you'd actually look at in line with climate change, and that would actually planting coconut in areas like Homa Bay would actually help with that. Mr. Speaker, another issue that I didn't hear the mention of is the issue of self-sufficiency. And Mr. Speaker, I'm concerned about that because on the one hand, you see the policy looking at food security, but at the same time, in terms of the actions that we are doing as a country, we are moving away from self-sufficiency by now looking at GMOs. And if we want to go GMO way, we are moving away from self-sufficiency. And if we want to be competitive as a country, then we must have a competitive niche in our agriculture sector. And that we can only do if you have control, and not where we have a situation where in terms of even the crops and seedlings that we are going to use, we will still be looking at other countries. Mr. Speaker, I'd want to talk a little about the fishing sector. And Mr. Speaker, one of the things that I think we need to do in terms after this policy is to provide urgent regulations to reduce conflict in the lake. There's very serious conflict between omena and the Nile perch fishers, and sometimes they even threaten to kill each other. There's a lot of potential for conflict. And there's also very clear need for regulations around caging, which is also creating a lot of issues. One of the things I didn't hear was the gender dimensions, even of this policy, even as we are talking about 16 days of activism on gender-based violence. And finally, Mr. Speaker, because I can see my time is up, I want to say that let us think of the farmer and put our action where our mouths are, so that we don't forget the farmer. Farmers are crying out in this country. I do support and thank you.
The MP for Mogotio, followed by the MP for Kwesero. Mogotio. Can you give him the... Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also stand to support the policy, Mr. Speaker, because agriculture is one of the main pillar of the economy of this country, Mr. Speaker, and it is facing a lot of challenges from climate change, Mr. Speaker, from change of weather patterns and rain patterns, which has really affected agriculture, from continuous low allocation of budget to agriculture, Mr. Speaker, from the low number of young people who are venturing into agriculture because they see it as a old people business that they should not venture into agriculture because it is not fashionable. So, Mr. Speaker, agriculture compromises almost 80% of the landmass of this country that really depends on agriculture. From Balambala way to Busia to Lamu, people depends on agriculture. It is a serious business to invest in agriculture in this country, that we should relook the policies and always improve the policies so that it become profitable to the people who are venturing in this agriculture, Mr. Speaker. So I stand here to support the policy as a way of helping those people at the bottom of the economy towards improving agriculture, from extension officers, from budgetary allocation, from pest control, and putting more energy into agriculture so that improves the economy and it affects those people at the bottom of the economy to be able to enable them to grow up the ladder to a country of self-sufficiency in terms of food and in terms of economy and in terms of being a country which doesn't rely on relief or donor food or GMOs. If we don't invest and improve the policies on agriculture, Mr. Speaker, we will end up relying on importation and sometimes having crises like we are having now because of lack of food. But if we improve the economy through improving the policies touching on agriculture, we'll be able to improve this economy and we'll be able to allow people to make money out of agriculture, and it becomes easy to govern the country, which is sufficient food and people have money. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for giving me that opportunity.
The MP for Huisero, followed by the MP for West Mugirango.
Thank you, Speaker. I also rise to support this sessional paper on the national policy on agriculture. As it has been alluded by the mover, Honorable Speaker, is that agriculture, from economical perspectives, plays a key role in the economy of this country. It accounts to about 80% of the gross domestic product. Also, Mr. Speaker, agriculture creates employment opportunities to many Kenyans in manufacturing, production, and even farming sector. Mr. Speaker, also this policy speaks to the coordination between the county government and the national government. As you know, according to Schedule 4 of the Constitution, agriculture is devolved, but there's need to coordinate between the national government and county government to enhance that agriculture is promoted. Mr. Speaker, this policy also speaks to transforming livestock, crop, and even fish farming in the country. But as we speak and as we support this policy, it is on us upon government to, one, provide incentive to farmers so that they can increase and advance in their production. Two is also the national government to promote capacity building among farmers so that farmers can adopt the current methods of production. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, government must also support value chain addition so that farmers can get value out of their produce. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
MP for West Mugirango, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also contribute to this sessional paper number 2 of 2021. On behalf of the people of West Mugirango, I laud the head of government business for bringing forth this policy. Kenya is no doubt an agricultural economy, and even if we have lost quite a lot in the cash crop areas like tea, pyrethrum, coffee, and even matoke, I think it is important that we have a uniform national policy that guides agriculture in this country. I agree that under Schedule 4, agriculture is a devolved function, but agriculture is too important to be left to county governments alone. And I really commend the national government for spearheading a policy of this magnitude that is going to impact on the largest employer in the Republic. And while we are at that, Mr. Speaker, it is also extremely important to know that as we do this policy paper, let it not be pro-rich or pro-big industries that are the big actors in the industrial, in the agricultural sector. The real farmers under this Kenya Kwanza bottom-up approach to business, the real farmer this policy should target is the small-scale growers of every crop in this republic. Because the big industries, the big farms, the big plantations have a way to sort out themselves in terms of getting cheap inputs, in terms of getting high-quality employees, and in terms of even getting market. The real challenge we have in this country is how to fix the small-scale farmer in the Republic, whether in the livestock sector, whether in the agrarian sector. Really, that is when we will solve our problem. When I grew up, our little farm was able to generate enough for our consumption, subsistence, and the surplus for the market. As we stand today, Mr. Speaker, many a farmer are dependent on markets going to look for a kilogram of maize or beans, and that is really a thing that the Kenya Kwanza government must help turn things upside down so that every household is able to provide food for itself. Even in the non-agricultural areas of this country conventionally, Mr. Speaker, I'm told in Japan, all you need is to get 10 kilograms of quality soil, hang it on a rafter of your roof, and then put in your sukuma wiki, and it will provide a meal for your household. So these kind of inventions are what we need to teach our children in school, so that as they grow up, they know that everybody can provide for their meal before they look at government for employment and other opportunities. And while at that, Mr. Speaker, when in agriculture, large-scale farmers and plantations are automating their production, more particularly the plucking of tea, I want to see this parliament bring a law that regulates that whoever has been employing somebody for 20 years and decides to automate, they should be required to train those people, equip them with alternative skills so that those people can get alternative employment elsewhere once they are declared redundant. And I want to support this policy and do hope that it will impact positively on the gross domestic product of this country. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, as I support.
MP for Kiaru.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Definitely, I rise to support. Mr. Speaker, agriculture is a very important sector in our country because agriculture, the entire value chain of agriculture, accounts for 20 to 30% of our GDP. The whole value chain also accounts for 40% of the entire employment in the Republic of Kenya and 70% of the jobs in rural areas. This shows the importance at which we must attach to the agricultural sector. Mr. Speaker, also, agriculture also has many linkages, both backward and forward linkages in terms of other industries. And actually, manufacturing as a sector, the basis of it is agriculture. Because most of the manufacturing that we do is value-adding the produce that we get from agriculture. But also, within manufacturing in terms of mechanical, agriculture also accounts for a lot in terms of the few areas that are mechanized within our agricultural sector. Mr. Speaker, we must also note that many times we confuse farming and agriculture. Farming, by all accounts, in the entire value chain of agriculture accounts for partly 20% of the entire value chain. The value chain that includes a lot in terms of transportation, warehousing, value addition, from farm to fork. Mr. Speaker, farming or our farmers only accounts for just around 20%. And the more the reason that we must be deliberate in trying to capture as much value from the chain, and especially this value going into farmers. Because farmers work the most, they do most of the job, but of course, they don't get returns commensurate to the effort that they put. Also, in regards to the debate we have in our country around food prices, and especially maize, we must be very clear, even as a government, as a leadership, not to confuse the role of the farmer or the role of government insofar as the farmer is concerned, and the role of the government in terms of the Kenyan consumer is concerned. Because if you attach these two things together, one of the party will be disenfranchised. If we assume that the role of the farmer is actually to feed Kenyans, then I think we'll be going in the wrong direction. Because the government has peculiar roles which are diverse. One of it is to make sure all Kenyans are fed, but on the other side, making sure that farmers are well remunerated. And Mr. Speaker, in economics, we usually give analogies. And one analogy is that it is not by the benevolence of the baker that we get our daily bread. It is not by the benevolence of the butcher that we get meat. It is not by the benevolence in this respect of the farmer that we get our daily meal. Mr. Speaker, it is out of the self-interest to make money that then we get unintended consequences. Though that should be left at that the farmer should be left to pursue their margins, but on the other side, the government must use other instruments to make sure that the Kenyan consumers are not paying exorbitantly for their daily meal. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the whole Kenyan infrastructure in terms of the economy, we are a net importer of food, by the way. We call ourselves an agricultural economy, but the irony is that we are a net importer of food. Mr. Speaker, also another irony is that economies that are industrial, the economies that have got robust manufacturing sectors, their people, the problem they have is actually overfeeding. That is a paradox, Mr. Speaker. That countries that actually assume the role of being agrarian based on agriculture, they can barely feed themselves. Mr. Speaker, I'm just trying to bring the point that we must cut down on our imports, because we have seen when we have increased demand in our country, this demand, instead of being filled by local production, both in terms of agriculture and manufacturing, we have been importing to fill up the gap. Therefore, we remain a country who is agrarian in terms of production, but in consumption, we are a fourth industrial. We are consuming high technology items, but on the other side of production, we are very banal and basic. Mr. Speaker, I support.
The MP for Samburu East, followed by the MP for Sotik.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also want to support this policy. Just as my other speakers said, agriculture is very important in our country. And I think, Mr. Speaker, when we are in school, we are told that agriculture is divided into two. There is crop production and there is also livestock. And I think it's not right when we take agriculture to mean only crops. We also need livestock production to be taken care of. And Mr. Speaker, there are so many, even product of livestock, the dairy farmers, and even those produce meat. It's equally important to be included, Mr. Speaker, so that we can carry the whole country together. Because there is a very large part of this country who are depending entirely in livestock production. And so many other things have been developed concerning the coffee, tea, and all that. But it is very important, equally important to include those. And this policy, Mr. Speaker, it will help our farmers. Farmers will be taken care of, and it will bring so many other important things that will support farmers in the entire country. So I think I want to put my opinion there that, Mr. Speaker, it is important livestock production should also be considered. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
MP for Sotik, followed by the MP for Igembe Central.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this policy. And Mr. Speaker, I want to start by saying I'm a product of agriculture. I am a son of a peasant from Sotik, and I know the value of agriculture. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the mover of this motion, because it is the first time this House is addressing agriculture as a specific subject. Agriculture for a long time, Mr. Speaker, has undergone a lot of problems, a lot of challenges, most of them man-made, some technical. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to speak specifically on the issue of dairy farming. I went to school. From the school fees, which was paid by my father, who was a peasant. And the dairy farming in our area of South Rift has a lot of challenges, Mr. Speaker. The cost of a liter of milk in Sotik is only 30 shillings. And when you buy 30 shillings of a liter from a farmer, and then sell a quarter, half a liter, for 60 shillings, Mr. Speaker, is a big irony in this country. So we want to address the issue of pricing. Why should a farmer in Sotik be paid 30 shillings, and then somebody in Sotik town is buying milk for 60 shillings? It's a serious issue. Mr. Speaker, I also want to ask the government to look into the issue of extension officers. When we were growing up, Mr. Speaker, we used to see extension officers coming to our farms and advising farmers on what to do so that they can have production grow. So, Mr. Speaker, I want the government to address the issue of extension officers so that farmers are able to get the latest technology and the latest issues in terms of inputs. Mr. Speaker, agriculture is the major source of employment as at now, hidden employment. And Mr. Speaker, if agriculture is going to be put in place, some issues are going to assist the people here to get employment. Mr. Speaker, I want to say also that agriculture is going to be a source of food security in this country. And therefore, I want to support this motion because I know it's going to be a source of many issues in this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to also ask the government to look at the issue of research. Mr. Speaker, in the Sotik area, the lower side, we have had a problem of maize disease, which has battered our economy for the last 15 years. And Mr. Speaker, we had COVID-19, which affected this country and the world over. And the research was done on COVID, and the drugs were found, the cure of this COVID was found, but the issue of maize problem has never been addressed. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion and ask that we also look at the issue of milk coolers, so that farmers can be able to bring their milk in the morning and in the evening, and therefore be able to address their issues. Mr. Speaker, I want to support this motion. Mr. Speaker, in Sotik also, we have a problem of milk, which is being transported from Sotik elsewhere in the country. And therefore, what we are saying is that we would like people who want to invest in Sotik to come and buy the milk, process it, make a value addition, so that people can also benefit from employment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the motion.
I had given the MP for Igembe Central, followed by the MP for Funyula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to address on this very important policy on session paper number 2 of 2021, touching on agricultural policy. Mr. Speaker, as many of the speakers have said earlier, agriculture is the main backbone of this country, contributing a very big percent in GDP, and it's a sector that should be given and supported and promoted to the highest level. Mr. Speaker, the main aim of this policy on agriculture is to increase production and at a low cost. Agriculture is an investment like any other, and whoever ventured in it has intentions of getting benefits and gaining profits in this business. And now that the government has taken initiative in promoting this industry, they should consider the main factors that bring this industry down. Because, Mr. Speaker, we cannot depend on agriculture and expect good pay from agriculture if we are depending on rainfall farming. This industry will only be of meaningful if we go in irrigation way and make sure that we are doing irrigation of farming, and that way we will have enough production products in our farms. And we cannot have irrigation agriculture unless we have enough water. And Mr. Speaker, if you go around, you'll find major and most of these catchment areas where we used to get the water for agriculture have been grabbed and been encroached, and the amount of water available for agriculture is going down. Therefore, it's a challenge to the government to make sure that the catchment areas are protected, we have enough water for irrigation, so that we can have enough food from our farms. Also, Mr. Speaker, we have a challenge with our infrastructure. Most of the areas, like the area where I represent, the Igembe Central, we have more than 100,000 of acres where farming is very horrible, but taking the farm produce to the market is a challenge, because there is no roads to the rural areas where the farms are. There is the major road known as Kora Road, and the area that road links to can feed the whole of Meru County and Lower Eastern, if there is a good road to the farms. So that also becomes a major challenge, Mr. Speaker, and I think and I believe if that area is tackled in terms of infrastructure, the production can go high and the farmers will be encouraged, because the government has a responsibility of making sure that our farmers are rewarded through their work. We also have a problem with the marketing. The area that I represent of Igembe Central, there are many growers of cash crop known as Mira, which is planted by about 98% of the region of the people that live in that area. I think that market has been a challenge for a while, And Mr. Speaker, there are countries that take this product as a serious cash crop. You go to a place like Ethiopia, you find the government is generating more than 30% of their GDP through miraa farming and selling. But in our country, our government is not taking it serious. The other day we had a market in Djibouti. We supplied for about 3 days. It was earlier controlled by Ethiopians. And the Ethiopian minister, the Ethiopian government had to send their trade ministry to Djibouti immediately to make sure that our supply has been cancelled. So you realize that there are countries that take that crop serious and the country again. And Mr. Speaker, remember when we used to supply miraa to Europe, the Kenya Airways business used to thrive through miraa cash crop and through the funds that were generated by Mirungi.
The MP for, oh, you've run out of your time. The MP for Funyula, followed by the MP for Runyenjes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity to contribute to the Agricultural Policy 2021, whose theme is Food, Our Health, Wealth and Security. Honorable Speaker, we have had a history of policies addressing various thematic areas in this country, and quite often we are obliged to undertake a review and develop a new policy in line with the changing environment. Honorable Speaker, I just pray and hope this debate is not a debate in vain, because there seems to be a tendency of the current regime to reverse all the policies, activities and actions initiated in the past regime. We just hope we'll not waste time today, discuss, and tomorrow all that has been contained in this booklet is thrashed and said to belong to some kind of dynasties that do not understand the issues at hand. Honorable Speaker, the policy for the very first time expands the definition of a cultural sector. Many times when you talk about a cultural sector, what used to come in mind with many people was farming, be it subsistence, be it commercial. That has been the idea. But now the expansion of the agricultural sector to include crop, livestock and fisheries subsectors amalgamates the wide spectrum to enable it for focused attention, and this will allow many areas that practice different forms of economic activity related to land, water and the environment to be put under one purview so that they can be dealt with comprehensively and effectively. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the policy, the key objective of the policy or the mission of the policy is to facilitate the transformation of agriculture in Kenya from subsistence production to viable commercial enterprises. Honorable Speaker, truth to be told, we are truly not the actual farmers. We are survivors who plant naturally food for our own consumption, which is hardly ever enough. Honorable Speaker, in a country where about 80% of the land masses is arsal, with erratic rainfall or no rainfall at all, the mission that the goal has, the policy sets itself is what we used to call in some movies, Mission Impossible. But it's always better to aim high and land as low as you can, but at least you have aimed high. Honorable Speaker, in this country, unless we move away from subsistence production, we are not going to solve the key objectives of this goal of providing the key core goals of transforming crop, livestock and fishery production into commercially oriented enterprises that ensure sustainable food and nutrition security. Honorable Speaker, we wait to see what the government will do. We wait to hear what the government will say. We wait to see how much resources the government will invest in the agricultural sector to meet the mission they have put for themselves here. Honorable Speaker, the policy enumerates the challenges that have besetted the agricultural sector probably since independence and since pre-colonial days. They are very many, but Honorable Speaker, one of the standout, I would just want to pick two, is the issue of low youth participation in agricultural development. Honorable Speaker, statistics do not lie, but if you read statistics, you find probably 90% of all those involved in agriculture are older people who probably might not be amenable to technology, might not be available to new ideas. So, Honorable Speaker, probably the overarching goal of this policy should to find ways of involving the youth into a cultural sector. And to involve the youth in the cultural sector, you need to ensure the cultural sector is the highest paying and ensure it adopts modern technology, modern ICT, and the rest of the matter. Honorable Speaker, in my constituency, we have started a conversation, Kilimo Biashara, to ensure that it's not just about subsistence cultivation, where there's hardly enough to sell in the commercial market, but to find ways and means of ensuring that we commercialize agriculture so that we can attract as many people as possible, minimize rural urban migration, and increase per capita income. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I support the policy and wish to implement as well. Thank you.
The MP for Runyenjes, followed by the MP for Mosop.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the session paper number 2 of 2021, the National Agricultural Policy. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say that agriculture is the next big thing in our country today. And the next millionaires will come from agriculture. But Mr. Speaker, it is very ironical that there are people who have indulged themselves in farming, be it coffee or even tea, but are not getting what they should be getting from it. The reason is we have a lot of cartels who are in the sector of coffee, such that those who do the farming are left without money, while those who do the brokerage, the marketing, and the consumption end up getting all the money that would otherwise go to the farmer. This is a thing that the government of Kenya needs to look into, because it is demotivating for the farmer to do a lot of work, yet get so little, yet they are the ones who should get the most of the benefits that come to do with farming. Mr. Speaker, as we speak now, the tea industry does not pay as it used to pay in the past. With the inflation that we have today, what we are paid in the tea farming cannot even be equated to what we used to receive in like 10 years ago, because the cost of living is so high, yet tea is not paying as much as it should be paying. So there is the need for the government of Kenya to intervene so that we ensure that our farmers do not work in vain. It is demotivating, it is demoralizing that people wake up in the cold, work all day, yet they get so little from it. Mr. Speaker, the policy that we are talking about is talking about the African Free Trade Area. And what this means is that we have many opportunities that go beyond our country. But we will not get there, Mr. Speaker, if we continue relying on rain-fed agriculture. Like one member has said, is that we are used to doing subsistence farming, while we should move from now doing subsistence farming to commercial farming. But this cannot be done if we do not get ourselves involved in the irrigation farming. I wish to confirm to you, Mr. Speaker, that our people have very good lands, very good soils to do cultivation. But you see, the rains have become very unpredictable because of the climate change. So if the government of Kenya is going to invest in irrigation farming, I wish to tell you that, Mr. Speaker, we are going to have a lot of food in this country, and agriculture is going to be a well-paying job for most of our people. Most of our people, up to about 80% in our rural areas, depend on agriculture. And you see the reason as to why young people today are not involving themselves in agriculture. It is because they are there to see that their parents are not getting anything out of it. So if we have got to get our young people to do agriculture, it means we must make it something that gives income for our people. And I am sure once that is done, most of our young people are going to get into it, and they are going to create employment for themselves, and that will also enhance food security. Mr. Speaker, the policy also addresses the issue of inter-county agricultural businesses. And you see, in my constituency, there is a crop which is called mogoka, which is generating a lot of income for our people. But, Mr. Speaker, you go to a county like Mombasa, and you'll hear and see that one lorry of mogoka is being charged 80,000 per entry to Mombasa. And 80,000 per lorry is an amount so huge, Mr. Speaker, that the ordinary farmer will not afford. So this policy, the National Agricultural Policy, I believe will address such issues so that at least in our country, our people can embrace more agriculture going forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable MP for Mosop, followed by the Honourable MP for Kiamba.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity that you've given me to support this policy on transforming crop, livestock, fisheries production in our country. Mr. Speaker, sir, as many of the members have supported this policy, I stand here as a testimony and knowing that since I was a child, we as a family have depended on agriculture. And at this time, as we bring this motion, it is very, very crucial because most of the citizens of this country depend on agriculture, either crop, livestock, or fisheries. And so it really needs a lot of attention as a nation. We have shifted from putting a lot of effort to actually leaving agriculture to only farmers. One of the things that this country needs to do and we need to do as a nation is to invest in agriculture, especially crop. Most of the seeds that we do have issues. Most of the farmers have resorted into moving from farming or planting crops to just selling their land for other things because they don't get the support. Some time back, we used to have a corporation called AFC, which used to provide finances for the farmers so that they can do commercial farming. But that corporation has really gone down. Two, most of the farmers really have been discouraged because of no market. Most of them, they would go into production, but once they have their crops and ready to harvested, there is no market for it. Three, the infrastructure. Most of the counties, the big problem they have is you can have huge production, but moving them from the farm to the market is a problem. So farmers get really frustrated. As we speak, the last few weeks we've been discussing here about the issue of maize. Most of the farmers moved away from farming maize or growing maize into other cash crops because the price of maize had gone down and continued to go down. So that now we are having a shortage of maize in the country because the farmers moved away from farming the maize. And as such, we are now depending on importing maize from other countries. But if we had, as a nation, invested a lot of our resources in making sure that the farmer gets a good price, we give them good seeds, we give them a good support, there will be no time that we'll go out looking for maize from other countries at a very high price. So as a nation, we really need to sit down and rethink. Most of the farms now have been subdivided and it's been fragmented into small farms so that now it is not even viable to do commercial. And as such, we need to rethink as a nation to move people from farming, from their farms into urban areas so that we can free most of the land. And once we free most of the land, then at that point, we will be able to do some commercial farming. Because people are used to now 2 acres, 3 acres, 5 acres, you will not be able to produce enough. But if we move those individuals or those citizens into urban areas and figure a way to sustain them, then we free the land and leave a few individuals to do commercial farming. That way we have enough production. Because of the climate change, which continues to be a big problem and it continues to, to be an issue, we need to do irrigation. You look at nations like Egypt, nations like Israel, they've been able to do a lot of production because they did drip irrigation, and all kinds of irrigation. They do a good job in feeding their citizens. There is no time that you hear these nations ran out of money or ran out of food to feed their country. They have devised methods and ways to do some serious commercial farming that's able to help and also support their farmers. So as such, I am supporting this policy that we need to relook into a policy on ways on how to actually support our farmers so that we can move into commercial farming away from subsistence farming. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity, and I support the policy.
The MP for Kiamba, followed by the MP for Keses.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me another opportunity to contribute on the matter of agriculture. Mr. Speaker, may I start by saying that I come from a county whereby we were known to be the basket of food for the Nairobians. Everybody who lived in Nairobi used to come and collect food from our county, that is Kiambu, and particularly in Kiambaa constituency, Mr. Speaker. May I say that currently the status of the agriculture in our county and probably in my constituency is not a good status, because at the end of the day, we have been able, to divide and to subdivide the agricultural land that was meant to be the food, to produce food for our own people within our own constituencies and within the county. There have been an issue, and people have been trying, to subdivide lands because probably they cannot be able to produce, or whatever they are producing is not beneficial to their income, or it doesn't tally with whatever they are putting into their farms and whatever they are producing, and how they are able to survive be using the agriculture or the harvest that they have been getting from their farm. Mr. Speaker, we are known, and we must say that we support the motion so that we make sure that even if we need to map out areas that are meant to produce food for our own people, because as we speak right now, I think we're in danger whereby every person who has a big chunk of land that was used for agriculture. When we were growing up, we used to go and pick black coffees in big farms within the county, within the constituency. That is what we were depending on, because we could be, the farmers were able to be paid something that can benefit them and also be able to help the workers who are working within their farm, Mr. Speaker. But the status of the current status is that it's no longer attainable. That's why people are going to subdivision and building flats and houses, so that at least they can be able also to support their families for different reasons, Mr. Speaker. May I say that we really need to come up with this policy to support minimum guarantee returns, whereby even the farmers who are doing zero grazing in 100 by 100 area of an acreage, that they are able to produce, and whatever they are producing is something that they can be able to feed their family first, and then after feeding their family, they can be able even to sell to the neighbors and extend probably even to the other counties and even sell internationally, Mr. Speaker. We must support minimum guarantee returns. That when you are putting that cow, when you are putting your seed on the ground, what is the expectations, what is expected of the government to support that person who have a small land, who is producing small, who is able to market and also to use it to market the small product that they are raising, they are producing. It is harnessed together. Then they are able to market their product and sell outside there, Mr. Speaker. So we must support this policy, make sure that we support those small scale farmers, make sure that we also map out and pass some policies so that areas that are meant for agriculture are not turned to become areas for housing and developing and even selling and, and subdividing and selling and making profit out of it. We must map out and state that we really need to support areas that are meant for agriculture, Mr. Speaker. Also on the issue of irrigation, it is something that we also need to really think as a country, because we can no longer rely on the climate. We no longer rely on the rain. So we must also think of a way that how will we produce more, and how do we support farmers, and how do we support agriculture using irrigation, Mr. Speaker. We have Kiamba Dam that we have been fighting for, and I'm happy because probably in the next few years we'll have Kiamba Dam so that we can support our local farmers in a small way, so that they can be able to produce food that will be beneficial to their families and even to the entire nation, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I support the motion. Dairy farming is key. Even if we are doing zero grazing within our constituencies, we must support farmers. So we support the motion. Let us, the Ministry of Agriculture, harness all these thoughts so that we come up with one policy and a bill to support agriculture, because it's the backbone of our nation, Mr. Speaker. I support the motion.
The MP for Kesses. MP for Kesses, yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise at these late evening hours to support a very crucial motion on the development of an agricultural policy. And I want to say I'm grateful that I'm coming in to this leadership at the time that Kenya is rising again. The agricultural policy, Mr. Speaker, sir, is a policy that is long overdue. Why am I saying this? Kenya, at this point, need to be divined well. The position of Kenya should be known. Other countries like Japan are known for production of Toyota cars. Germany is known for production of Mercedes-Benz. Ford is known to be coming from America. Israel is known to be doing well in agriculture and more so fruit production. What then Kenya is known about? As we talked the other day, the statistics of the population were released, and Kenya is rated to be a 50 million population. That, Mr. Speaker, tells us there are 50 million mouths to be fed. In this case, how are we going to match this one as an economic opportunity for the Kenyans? And more so, what we are comparatively advantaged compared to the other regional countries. I'm saying this, Mr. Speaker, in support of this motion, that the motion should come in force and should be able to give a clear direction of where we are and where we should be. That is going to bring us back and collect us back our minds to the long-gone saying we used to say, kilimo ni uti wa mgongo wa inji ya uchumi ya inji ya Kenya. That's where we need to go back. The other day we were discussing the issue of land fragmentation. And if you look at that one, it is being incentivized by the fact that agriculture has lost the meaning because it's not paying back the farmer what it ought to pay. The cost of investment vis-a-vis the return on investment is not commensurate. And therefore, there is a serious flee out of farming to other sectors like real estate, where it poses a challenge to agriculture by demonstrating and hope for this land user that the alternative of farming is to construct real estate. But in the long run, it will not ever answer the first question of our livelihood, the food security. Then the food security, how are we going to utilize agriculture as an economic activity to create employment, to bring out industrialization? So this policy should be able to guide and inform the future decisions of the government. I know now county governments are working on the county integrated development plans. National government are working on the budget policy statements, medium-term economic plans. All these put together, plus where we are going the Vision 2030, which is few years to go for us to reach the Vision 2030 target, and the standard development goals that our region Africa is focusing in and the whole world. All these put together, I'm happy that today we are here discussing the policy that is going to position us as a country. And in this case, we need to look at this policy and expand it well to define the responsibility of all the actors in the sector. When we talk of agriculture, as my colleague has said, we are looking at farming. We are looking at middle processes in place, that is a trading, conversion, industrialization, up to the sector of releasing to the market of food to the mouth of human beings. All this put together, Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this motion and call upon this policy to be able to give and divine a responsibility to all the actors, one say the county government, the national government, the research centers, because the challenge farmers are going through now is the quality seeds. There is no proper research that is going to give us quality seeds that are disease resistant, that are going to yield maximum, even the seed to our animal husbandry, the AI, that is going to ensure maximum production compared to the feed that our animals are being given. So, Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion and call upon the policy implementers after this House. It should not stop here now, but we need to put it seriously, focus on our resource allocation, our resource planning, put more energy on agriculture, because this one is going to support our economy. This one is going to create employment. This one is going to bring up our youth that are vulnerable in this time and era. Go back to agriculture and earn their living, create employment there, and maximize our food security and create economic transformation to this nation. Thank you so much.
The MP for Roysambu, Honorable Mafrika.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this policy. And before I support Mr. Speaker, when I look around here in this House, for those who are left here, Mr. Speaker, you bear me witness that if we can make an observation or we turn back, how the Minister of Agriculture used to support farmers in 70s and 80s, it was wonderful. I want to say that the Minister of Agriculture has failed since the day they withdrew the agricultural officers who used to advise farmers how to conduct the farming, Mr. Speaker. If you can remember, Mr. Speaker, we used to have agricultural officers who used to go around engaging farmers, advising farmers, and telling farmers which is the best crop for which area. But today, Mr. Speaker, farmers are lacking that support. Farmers are lacking that advice. Every farmer now today undertakes his or her own ways of farming without that knowledge, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to livestock, Mr. Speaker, we used to have cattle dips during that time. Today we don't have cattle dips. Mr. Speaker, if we are to implement this policy successfully, we have highly qualified agricultural officers in this country. But we rarely see them going out there to engage farmers and advising farmers on how to conduct the best farming techniques. Mr. Speaker, if we are to succeed in this implementation of this good policy, I would say that all the agricultural officers, they should come out from the offices. They leave the business of reading newspapers in offices. They go out there to advise farmers on how to conduct the best. They give them advices on how to go about farming. Mr. Speaker, today, if you go out there, you ask a farmer which is the best fertilizer to apply on planting of maize. One will tell you 2020 type of fertilizer. You ask another one, he will tell you 2323. And this, Mr. Speaker, is due to lack of knowledge. And this knowledge is supposed to be imparted by to farmers by the agricultural officers, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I support, and at the same time, Mr. Speaker, I say that the Minister of Agriculture and our new minister should advise his agricultural officers to go out there to advise farmers on how to conduct the farming. We have the best animal production officers in this country, Mr. Speaker. They also go out there to advise those who are doing animal production, livestock, on how to go about it, Mr. Speaker. I support.
The MP for Kitui Rural, Honorable Devin Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance also to contribute to this motion. The importance, I'll start by saying that the importance of the agricultural sector cannot be understated because agriculture sector contributes 25% of our GDP. And if you add forests, it goes to almost 30% of the GDP. It employs 80% of total employment of this country. And, you know, when people are employed, they also earn income and reduce poverty, which is very common among our communities. It brings in foreign exchange, and, you know, tea is the highest foreign exchange earner in the country. It also provides inputs to our agricultural farms, factories. You know, most of our industries use agricultural inputs. Mr. Speaker, since independence from 1955, there have been different policies and plans and strategies to develop agriculture in this country, because agriculture, as you know, it also provides food to us. But agriculture sector continues to face many challenges, and this policy tries to address these challenges. Some of the challenges are highly erratic and unpredictable rainfall, especially in ASO counties where, Mr. Speaker, me and you come from. Reduction of agricultural land because of the subdivisions, and as previous speaker have said, within urban areas, most of the agricultural land have been subdivided, and they are being used for putting up low buildings, high building as settlements. It also faces low agricultural production because of the kind of inputs you are using. Most time you are getting very poor seeds, and the sector is also facing poor marketing and value addition. The sector has also faced poor governance in farmers' organizations and cooperatives, and this policy is trying to address that. Mr. Speaker, I remember a long time ago, we used to have extension officers, and I'll say, to me, is unfortunate. Part of this sector has been given to the counties. And a long time ago, we used to have extension officers, agricultural officers, which used to advise our farmers on the kind of crops to be planted, kind of seeds which they should use. But if you go to the rural areas, these kind of services are no longer there. I'm a farmer, but I rarely see any extension officer coming to advise me on what to plant. And by the way, when you call them, I think you have to pay them. So some of these services, I think they need to be brought in. Mr. Speaker, and I like what the government is trying to do, subsidizing production, because if you subsidize production, then you are creating employment. If you subsidize consumption, then you are reducing employment in this country. But some of these subsidies, like what we are seeing now, the fertilizer price is going down. You know, these subsidies only goes to where tea, coffee, sugar, maize are grown. I'm just wondering, when farmers from areas in us or these counties, like me and you, are going to get subsidies. These droughts have brought a lot of misery to the rest of farmers in this country. People have lost their cows, they have lost their livelihood, but the government is not coming to their aid. I don't know the policy where
we have 2 more minutes. I give you 3 minutes. Proceed. Chair gives you 3 minutes more. Allow him to have the mic. Go to the one next to you, somehow.
Chair, thank you. Although this one is very short, now I'm a tall guy. So some of these subsidies should be also extended to the farmers in the ASO areas. I was saying that a lot of farmers have lost a lot of cows, a lot of their livestock. But I'm not seeing any government effort really to cushion those farmers. Long time ago, I even go to other countries. Government used to buy cows in the drought period. And they keep the first money for the farmers. So when the rain comes, the farmers can go back and restock. So this policy should be wholesome. They address the issues of livestock, they address the issues of fishing, and also so that everybody as a Kenyan feels that is catered for. Today I was listening to somebody from South Africa, and he was saying that this idea of GMO, you know, GMO seeds cannot be replanted. If you plant GMO seeds, then you cannot replant them. And you know, he was saying that the companies which are producing these GMO seeds, they also become cartels. They make sure that they colonize you and make sure that anytime you go and buy seeds from them at whatever price. So I support this policy, and with a few remarks, thank you very much.
I think the mover will have to reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As I reply to this very important debate that has taken place on this policy paper, I wish to thank all the members for their remarks, which will go a long way in enriching the implementation of this agricultural policy, sessional paper number 2 of 2021. Honorable Speaker, from the members' contribution, we have realized that as a country, we have lost a lot in terms of investing in agriculture, and many of our farmers have lost hope. But through this paper, through this policy, the hope of our people will be revived. And we have also realized that for sure agriculture is the backbone of our economy. And this policy needs to be implemented as soon as we can, and we also need to give it a lot of attention. Mr. Speaker, as members who are contributing, the following are some of the things that they have highlighted. Once implemented, Kenya or our country will have adequate income, and that will have direct input on our GDP, which will be improved a lot. We will also be able to provide sufficient food at a very reasonable price. That means that Kenyans will be able to afford buying food and sustaining their families. We've also realized that by doing this, we will be able to take care of the unemployed people, and especially youth. So we'll be able to create a lot of jobs, and people will be able to earn a living. Again, another important thing that we have noted from the members' hearing is that there is need of proper coordination between the national and the county government. Because as of now, yes, agriculture is devolved, but a lot needs to be done, and proper coordination between the two governments. And again, in the past many years, farmers or agriculture agricultural practice has not received a lot of support from the government. And so members have said that we need to invest so that farmers can be able to do farming, and also we give attention to the small scale farmers or growers, and the idea of bottom up to be given attention. Mr. Speaker, the country or any government that cannot feed its citizen is not free. And by doing this policy, we'll be able to reduce poverty, as I've already said, and we will have a healthy society. There is need for us to cut on the importation of anything, and especially food, and by doing this, we'll be able to take care of that. As we give attention to crop production, members feel that equal attention should be given to livestock production and also fishing. There is need for us as a country to make some deliberate move so that we invest in irrigation. Now that because of climate change, we cannot anymore depend on rains, and so there is need for our country to invest in irrigation farming that will improve our food production. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I beg to reply and request that pursuant to Standing Order 53.3, you defer the putting of the question to the following day. I thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable members, order. Honorable members, order. Order. Honorable members, the Honorable mover of the motion, I have indeed am directing that this matter be put on the order paper for putting the question tomorrow, the 1st of December 2022. Honorable members, the time being 6:12 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Thursday, the 1st of December 2022 at 9:30 a.m.